Chapter 112. It's all Master's fault for not listening to my advice. I've always been thinking about you, Kala said in a cold voice. Wuming activated Fantasy Summon, Install, and his body glowed. The light condensed in Wuming's palm and turned into a card. Wuming's body returned to its original appearance. Well, let's go to sleep. Kalas, you should also go to bed early, Wuming said and began to walk toward the house. I know, Master, I will go to bed early. Kalas followed Wuming, was silent for a while, and then said affirmatively. Wuming looked at Kalas, who was floating in the air, and said, Don't try to play any tricks. Just like before, I will temporarily shut down all your analytical abilities. Kalas shrugged helplessly and said, I will pay attention to my rest. Please rest assured, Master. However, Wuming still expressed helplessness for this human-like action as always. God knows what kind of hobby Zelik had. He actually set the magic costume to be able to move freely like a human. Can you imagine the scene of a pair of dragon horns constantly moving? It was really funny. Okay, let's go to sleep. Please don't interrupt my speech. It's very impolite, Master. I know. The master and servant walked into the house. The courtyard returned to its silent scene. The night slowly disappeared, and the day came. Wuming came to the courtyard early and took out the assassin class card. Install, Fantasy Summon. Wuming changed into the appearance of wearing a skull mask, a black cloak, and a bandage on his right hand. After all, Kalas was Wuming's noble phantasm. Wuming could freely control her. Therefore, Wuming put his noble phantasm Kalas in a temporary state. In short, it was sleeping mode. Only then could he concentrate on studying the card. Wuming waved his hand, and a large amount of soil on the ground gathered, forming a few soil animals of different shapes. Wuming thought about the name of the relic and pointed his right hand at one of the mud animals. Zabaniya, delusional voice. The bandage on Wuming's right hand loosened, revealing a monster-like arm. Immediately after, his arm instantly extended and touched the soil animal that Wuming had locked onto. Then, he instantly retracted his arm. At this moment, something appeared in Wuming's hand, a blood-red heart. However, this heart did not beat. Wuming crushed it, and the targeted soil animal began to disintegrate, as if the magic power was insufficient. Wuming instantly increased the output of magic power and supplied it to the earth animal. Then, the collapsing earth animal gradually recovered. After that, Wuming did the same thing to the other earth animals. Without exception, all of them collapsed first, and with the support of Wuming's magic power, they regained the appearance of the earth animal. Does it only have a pure lethality to inanimate objects, and such a weak lethality? Wuming put the bandage on his right hand back in place, and his right hand became like an ordinary person again. The power that Wuming was using at that moment was the power of Hassan Sabah, who had the hand of a demon god. The strange right hand just now was that demon god's arm. According to Wuming's experimental analysis, this relic simulated the opponent's life into a heart, which was the model of the opponent's heart. Although it was a model, it had the ability to curse. Moreover, this ability was only effective on living creatures with hearts. After all, for living creatures with hearts, the heart was their weakness. The main thing was that if the heart was gone, it was basically impossible to survive. Generally, for those without hearts, this relic could also simulate a heart, but its power would be greatly reduced, and it would become purely lethality. It seems like this ability is only effective against living creatures, Wuming said calmly. At that moment, Wuming wanted to try it on living creatures. He shook his head. After all, he could not leave his magic workshop too frequently. After that, Wuming began to test Hassan Sabah's skill. No, it should be a skill that all assassins had, or a concealment. The aura concealment skill that Wuming used by Hassan Sabah was a grade. Basically, it could be said that no one would be able to find him. Of course, if there was a special relic, it would be different. Wuming thought to himself. His body gradually disappeared, as if the original person had suddenly disappeared. After a while, Shiro Amiya yawned and walked out of the room, starting the task of preparing breakfast. Wuming and Shiro Amiya each took care of the food for the day, changing it day by day. Shiro Amiya walked and walked, but suddenly, he stopped. Why do I feel like something is approaching me? Shiro Amiya looked around cautiously and said in disbelief. Suddenly, Shiro Amiya stood in the same place nervously, with a "don't blame me if you come any closer" posture. Wuming suddenly appeared behind Shiro Amiya. A dark knife was placed on Shiro Amiya's neck. Shiro Amiya was shocked. He did not realize that the guy behind him was approaching, and at that moment, a knife was placed on his neck. How is it, Shiro? You didn't expect this, right? Wuming said. Then, Wuming put down the knife in his hand. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming in relief. I knew it. Let's not talk about whether there is an assassin card or not. Even if there is, I don't think anyone can sneak into your magic workshop. Wuming smiled, then threw a card with a woman with a bow and arrow on it to Shiro Amiya. You have to have the ability to protect yourself. If you encounter the same situation as before, do you think those people will kill you instantly or chat with you? Wuming teased. Shiro Amiya took the card that could transform into his future heroic spirit form and nodded at Wuming. I got it, brother. Then, Wuming asked, right, is Sakura still not up yet? I kind of missed the soup she made last night. Shiro Amiya said helplessly, brother, Sakura had a close shave with death yesterday. She chatted with me for half a day before going to sleep. She is still weak now, let's not disturb her. At that moment, Shiro Amiya's face was flushed. Oh, you're indeed my brother. You got her so quickly. Wuming said sarcastically. Wait, what do you mean by that? We were just chatting last night. Wuming did not listen to him. Instead, he walked to Mayo's room. All right. Go and prepare dinner. Julian will definitely send people to attack us today. You have to be alert. He might have a heroic spirit card with a unique relic or skill. After that, Wuming walked into the house. Shiro Amiya was stunned when he heard that it was Julian. However, he soon reacted. Wei Gongshi clenched his fists, and his gaze became even more resolute. Chapter 113. After breakfast, Wuming and Shiro Amiya began to fight one-on-one. Sakura Madu and Mayu stood on the side, watching the two. Install, Dream Summon. As the incantation fell, Wei Gongshiro's heroic spirit transformed. Shiro Amiya instantly used projection magic to condense a pair of black and white dual swords and rushed toward Wuming. Ganjiang Moi, husband and wife sword. Wuming observed Shiro Amiya's dual swords. Create green item, advanced item creation. As soon as his voice fell, a pair of ordinary knight swords appeared in each of Wuming's hands. Boom! The knight swords collided with Ganjiang Moi. The two of them kept waving the swords in their hands, and the impact of the swords hit the courtyard. Wuming and Shiro Amiya created a magical barrier around them to prevent the aftermath from affecting Mayu and Sakura Madu. So powerful, Senpai and Onie-sama. Sakura Madu covered her mouth and said in surprise. Mayu had seen a lot of things, so she wasn't surprised. However, she still felt that it was unbelievable for her scholarly brother. Because in the beginning, 5 years ago, Shiro Amiya was killed by Wuming in one move. Now Shiro Amiya could fight with Wuming for dozens of rounds, which was quite good. Not bad, Shiro. Wuming said to Shiro Amiya while waving the swords and swords. Sure enough, even if I use the card, Onie-san is still as strong as ever. Shiro Amiya said. I'm going to work harder, Shiro. After that, Wuming's movements suddenly changed. The knight's sword seemed to be tied to a boulder, and each blow was mixed with heavy power, constantly bombarding Shiro Amiya. With each bombardment, Shiro Amiya's Ganjiang-moi would inevitably shatter, and then Shiro Amiya would use projection magic again in an instant to recondense the dual swords. Wei Gong Shiro kept retreating in the midst of the constant attacks and destruction, until, boom. What? Wuming shattered one of his knight swords, and a large number of fragments flew in front of Shiro Amiya, blocking his sight. In Shiro Amiya's surprised eyes, Wuming held a sword with both hands and swung it down. Shiro Amiya flew out, rolled a few times on the ground, and stopped. Senpai. Sakura Midu saw Shiro Amiya fell to the ground and quickly ran over to help Shiro Amiya up. Shiro Amiya deactivated his heroic spirit form and was weakly supported by Sakura Midu. Onie-san, you're still so merciless. Shiro Amiya bitterly smiled. Wuming loosened the knight's sword in his hand that had reached the limit of its durability, and the knight's sword disappeared into spots of light, and then said, You just fought me as a servant. If I still suppressed my power like before, then this battle would be meaningless to you. If Onie-san didn't train with me every day, I might even forget that Onie-san is a servant. Wuming walked to Shiro Amiya's side, and several Lune healing spells appeared, and Shiro Amiya's body emitted a green light. And I'm not a dead heroic spirit, maybe I'll come back to you one day after I leave. After Wuming finished speaking, the atmosphere fell into silence. Wuming also realized that he said something wrong, but it was a fact. After all, Wuming couldn't stay here forever. Sakura Midu also noticed that Shiro Amiya and Meiyu were silent, and then she felt that she should change the topic. Actually, I have a question to ask Onie-sama. Onie-sama, you are a caster servant, right? Why is your melee ability so strong? That's because I'm a melee mage. Wuming said jokingly, and then looked at Shiro Amiya, hinting him to explain. Actually, Onie-san's real identity is Hyunryong, the one who taught Hero King. Shiro Amiya said. Yuruk Hyunryong. Sakura Midu exclaimed in surprise. Yes, it's really an ill-fated relationship. Gilgamesh's card is with Julian, right? I really want to see it. Wuming said with some nostalgia. After all, Wuming left Yuruk for some time, and Wuming missed that Sundara girl. He didn't know whether Gilgamesh in this parallel world was a man or a woman. Onie-san, you just condense magical power into your sword, right? Shiro Amiya asked. Yes, because I'm not dead, even if I'm a caster servant, I don't have any magical skills, but I won't be directly affected, and I can still use magical power skillfully. Moreover, I'm a caster servant who is most familiar with magical skills, so attaching magical power to my sword is a piece of cake. Although that's what he said, generally speaking, a caster servant is basically not a warrior, so basically, no warrior can be a caster. Of course, if someone can be like Wuming, then it's Wuming's archer, Sharon. If it's him, he can use magical power like Wuming. After all, Sharon is the teacher of the great heroes in Greek mythology, and he has the adaptability of all 7 classes. Well, you 3 go and rest, there are guests coming. After he finished speaking, Wei Gongshi and the others felt the ground tremble slightly. Then, Wuming's hand crossed the air, and an oval mirror appeared. Through the far-end perspective mirror, Wuming and others can clearly see a small giant with a height of more than 2 meters and a magician wearing a robe. One of them is walking on the ground, the other is flying in the sky, and they are moving in a certain direction. Of course, Wuming and others are very clear that they are moving toward the Amiya mansion. Are they? Berserker and Caster. Shiro Amiya was surprised. After all, not to mention Castor flying in the sky, the seemingly irrational giant is even more terrifying. The giant's eyes were red, and he was breathing heavily. His hair was disheveled and messy. He was only wearing a combat uniform. His upper body was bare, and his muscles looked very powerful. His feet were bare, and he was holding a stone weapon that looked like both an axe and a sword. At first glance, it's not a good enemy. Only sending Berserker and Castor, are you looking down on me? Wuming said lightly. Callis, can you analyze the power of these two heroic spirits? Golden Green's dragon horn appeared on Wuming's head, and then it made a sound. Through Berserker and Castor's clothes, I can judge that they are Greek characters, but I can't analyze everything with the current information. Is that so, Shiro? Take Mayu and Sakura back to their room. Wuming ordered. I know, brother. Soon, Shiro Amiya sent Sakura Madu and Mayu back to their room. Then, Shiro Amiya used the card, entered the heroic spirit state, and came to Wuming's side. At this moment, Berserker and Castor have arrived outside the Amiya mansion. Chapter 114. Berserker stood straight in front of the Amiya mansion, while Castor was flying in the air. The Ainsworth family is really useless, they can't even subdue a mere prop. Atlam Gariasta said disdainfully. As a member of a new family, Atlam said that as one of the supervisors of the three families, they couldn't even control the Great Holy Grail. To participate in the Holy Grail War, they actually came to take the Great Holy Grail. The Ainsworth family is really useless, no wonder they were exterminated. Atlam was wearing a mage robe, a hood on his head, holding a staff, floating beside Berserker and cursing. Hey! Mad Dog, I will open the enchantment of this magic workshop, you quickly go in and teach them a good lesson for me. Roar, roar, roar. Berserker made an unknown roar, but it seemed that this Berserker was very obedient to Atlam's words. Just when Atlam was about to cast Kanagi magic to open the magic workshop of Wuming, the enchantment in front of the two automatically opened. Oh ho, you're quite tactful, aren't you? Saves me from wasting time. However, if you can consciously hand over the Great Holy Grail, that would be perfect. It would save me a lot of trouble, Atlam said arrogantly. Roar, 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 roar. Berserker roared furiously and rushed forward step by step. Wuming instantly appeared in front of Berserker, which made Berserker, who still had a trace of sanity, stop. Atlam asked arrogantly, are you the servant summoned by the Great Holy Grail? I didn't expect you to be a caster like me. You are really suitable to guard the Great Holy Grail. Because Saber, Lancer, and Archer were basically not weak in terms of magic power, Castor's damage to them was not considerable. Ryder was in a better situation than Castor because of the bonus of his mount. Assassin, who was also known as the weakest class, didn't need to fight at all. And Berserker, needless to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. That was to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. It can be said that except for Assassin, who was not good at frontal combat, Castor was the weakest class among all the classes. However, as far as Wuming knew, Castor could be said to be the strongest at some point. So, who gave you the courage to challenge me, Julian? Wuming smiled and said in a gentle tone. Oh. You're pretty arrogant, aren't you? So you're the teacher of the ancient king. Arya bragged so much about you, but you're just a magician from the divine generation. You were just born a few thousand years before me, humph. Just a servant, just a tool, I don't know what you are talking about. Now I also have the power of a god's magician, but before that, let me see how you deal with Berserker. I don't want to hide it from you, Berserker's real name is Hercules. Atlam seemed to be a bit too arrogant, he satirized Wuming and finally exposed Berserker's real name. However, even if he looked down on servants, he didn't think that Castor, who dared to face Berserker and didn't panic, didn't have a trump card. To be on the safe side, Atlam let Berserker go first. Then Berserker, who still had a trace of consciousness, seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with Atlam's exposure of his real name, but he still responded to Atlam and rushed toward Wu Ming. The huge axe slashed toward Wu Ming at a speed that was beyond the ordinary servants. In an instant, smoke filled the air. Atlam didn't expect Berserker to be able to kill Wu Ming. After all, the caster, who could face Berserker without any defense, either had defensive means or teleportation ability. Sure enough, when the smoke dispersed, Wu Ming disappeared, and the ground was still intact. Berserker's attack only raised a trace of dust, even the ground that had been transformed into Wu Ming's magic workshop couldn't be broken. Teleportation. Atlam frowned. Just when Atlam was carefully looking for Wu Ming's position, Wu Ming's voice came into their ears. So that's how it is. Thank you for telling me the name of the most difficult berserker, Castor. In an instant, a large number of silver chains broke through the air and madly wrapped around Berserker's body. Berserker could still struggle at first, but when the silver chains had tightly wrapped around Berserker, Berserker couldn't move anymore. At that moment, Berserker was like a mummy that was standing in an attacking posture. Except for the eyes, the rest of his body was wrapped by a large number of silver chains that appeared from the golden ripples in the air. Oh! Do you think you can trap Hercules with just chains? You're too naive. Atlam shouted to the surroundings. Then, he silently searched for Wu Ming's location. However, to Atlam's disappointment, not only he couldn't find Wu Ming's position, but even Berserker couldn't break free from those silver chains. What's going on? For not being able to find Wu Ming, Atlam was calm. After all, this was Castor's magic workshop. It was normal to not be able to find him, but it was abnormal that Berserker couldn't break free from the chains. After all, this was the card of the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules, as the god of strength. How could he not break free from the chains? That's normal, Castor, this is Enkidu. Wu Ming's figure appeared beside Berserker, as if he was invisible before. Enkidu. How is that possible? Isn't that the hero king, Gilgamesh's noble phantasm? Atlam was a little panicked at the moment. After all, the reason why he came here to seize the great Holy Grail was because of his selfishness, and he didn't know why he could command the almost irrational Berserker Hercules card user. After all, the normal Hercules was already very powerful, and with the bonus of Berserk, his attributes could be regarded as the ceiling level. Moreover, Hercules also had a powerful noble phantasm called 12 Trials, God Hand. 12 Trials, God Hand, level, B-type, noble phantasm attack range, maximum effect. 1 person. It gave Hercules a body that could resist damage below B level, including B level. This noble phantasm also had the effect of automatically resurrecting the body after death, giving Hercules the ability to resurrect 11 times, and with enough magical power, the number of resurrections consumed could be recovered. It gave the effect of, after receiving damage once, it will generate resistance to the same type of damage next time. It could be said that Berserker Hercules was an invincible hero spirit, but it had a fatal weakness. Divinity, Ace, the hybrid of Zeus and human, Hercules, who was welcomed as a god after death, had a high divinity skill. This skill became Hercules' biggest weakness. Chapter 115. How is that possible? That's the Enkidu we're talking about. Atlam exclaimed with his eyes wide open. Wu Ming didn't have Enkidu at the moment, and the real Enkidu was still in his root. But Wu Ming had a bug-like skill called Create Great Item. At this moment, those Enkidu that wrapped around Berserker were created by Wu Ming with this skill. Since then, Wu Ming has been promoted to Castor, and through the connection with the Great Holy Grail, and through the inherent skill miracle, Wu Ming found that many of his skills have undergone a qualitative change. Take Create Great Item for example. The effect of this skill could be said that as long as the item created by Wu Ming was the same as the real item. The only drawback was the durability. If it was expressed in terms of attributes, then the item created by Wu Ming with Create Great Item would have an E durability. The way to maintain the durability was to constantly infuse the created item with magical power that was almost equivalent to an EX level Noble Phantasm every second. After all, it was a fake item that could be created out of thin air, and this only worked on Wu Ming. After all, no one had that much magical power. However, it was still bearable for Wu Ming, who had an unimaginable amount of magical power. Just like the dozens of Enkidu that were binding Berserker at this moment. Even if those dozens of Enkidu were Noble Phantasm, if Wu Ming let them maintain their durability, it would take 3 months of continuous magical power infusion to deplete Wu Ming's magical power. And that was not counting the amount of magical power Wu Ming had to restore himself. All in all, you have lost, caster. Wu Ming smiled and said to Atlam. Lost? Are you kidding me? Even without Berserker, I won't lose. Atlam's voice stopped abruptly. Because at this moment, a red servant was standing beside him. Atlam's body was full of black and white swords, almost all over his body. Triple-linked crane wings altar. Show! Atlam's body was pierced by thousands of swords, and Caster's card user fell to the ground. What? Time. Ho! Atram stuttered. Then Atlam's body changed and turned into an automaton. A card printed with a white beard wearing a hood holding a book in one hand and a staff in the other hand was attached to it. So far, he didn't even make a move, and his real name wasn't exposed, but he was killed by Mia Shiro. Shiro Amiya picked up the card, walked to Wu Ming's side, and handed it to Wu Ming. Big brother, I keep having the feeling that this guy is bluffing. I feel that even without Big Brother's help, I can still kill him. Wei Gong Shirang said with confidence. Wu Ming thought that was true. With Shiro Amiya's talent, even without Wu Ming's 5 years of training, Shiro Amiya could defeat almost all servants with that inexplicable hero spirit, Amiya card. After all, he could cast projection magic, which could restrain other hero spirits' equipment. Amiya's Noble Phantasm was mixed with it. Rather than calling it projection magic, it was more like a fake gate of Babylon. It seems that this guy is just a dabbler. He didn't even notice my buff. Wu Ming smiled and shook his head. Shiro Amiya was a little helpless, and then said, Brother, you're too abnormal. You can even simulate the skill of an assassin. Wu Ming looked up, then reached out and touched his dragon horn headdress, and the dragon horn glowed, and then said, This is Kalla's credit, I don't have so much time to study that. Yes, the reason why Wu Ming could use his magic workshop and magical interference to block Shiro Amiya's buff was all thanks to Golden Green Callas. After Wu Ming removed Callas's Noble Phantasm, Callas woke up. As soon as she woke up, Callas ignored Wu Ming. Even if Wu Ming asked her something, she answered Wu Ming in a cold tone. It wasn't until Wu Ming used some comforting means and some special methods that Callas returned to her original state and helped Wu Ming to analyze Assassin's skill. Master used very cruel means to make me surrender. I had no choice but to do this. Golden Green's dragon horn made a sound to defend itself. However, there was not the slightest grievance in its cold tone. It seemed to be mixed with a trace of happiness. Wei Gong Shiro, on the other hand, was not surprised. After all, his elder brother always appeared weak in front of his own magic dress, Miss Kelly. After all, Miss Callas was also a very strict artificial elf. Shiro Amiya thought. Oh yeah, big brother, Shiro Amiya looked at Wu Ming, how do we deal with this big guy? After that, Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya looked at Berserker who was tied up. Don't worry, Callas has already helped me think of a solution. Wu Ming smiled mysteriously. The remaining personality of the Berserker card user seemed to feel a chill. Berserker's body that had stopped struggling began to struggle again, accompanied by a miserable roar. Wuming took out the nameless spellbook. Wuming placed the spellbook flat on his hand, and the spellbook automatically turned pages quickly and stopped at one of the pages. Dreamland. Wuming also drew several Lune runes in the air. As the Lune runes were drawn and the spell was recited, Hercules fell into silence. Dreamland was a 10th level emotional interference spell. It was originally a high-level spell used to restrict the enemy's movements. After being converted into reality, it became a spell that could make the enemy fall into an illusion created by the caster. In the illusion, the caster was God, everything. The victim would be controlled by the caster in the illusion, which would affect their physical body. However, the success rate of this spell was not high because the high-level players of Yggdrasil would equip some special defensive items or use some special defensive skills at the beginning to defend against these invisible side attacks. A series of defensive items or skills such as anti-intelligence exploration, anti-control, control time reduction, illusion break, and so on. And because of Berserker's madness, although the card user still had a trace of sanity, the success rate was still too low. Wuming used some Wait for Me blessing runes to increase the success rate of casting. It just so happened that Berserker had fallen into the illusion created by Wuming. Chapter 116. Wuming dragged the user of Berserker into an illusion. After a while, Berserker's body, which was bound by chains, began to glow. Then, Berserker began to shrink. Dozens of Enkidu also followed and tightly bound the shrunken figure. Just like that, a humanoid figure the size of an ordinary person who was tightly bound by Enkidu appeared in front of Wuming and Wei Gong Shiro. A card with a picture of a crazy berserker fell to the ground. Wuming picked up the card and looked at the figure tied by Enkidu. With a wave of his hand, all the Enkidu disappeared. The figure fell to the ground as if it had reached its limit and turned into an automaton. Wuming waved his hand, and the automaton disappeared. Sure enough, a mere automaton can't withstand the erosion of a rank card. Those automatons that were used by Julian could use rank cards because they had a human soul and personality. However, the rank card itself had the problem of eroding the user, not to mention Berserker was a servant with Berserk skill. Therefore, after Berserker's card user deactivated his heroic spirit, he couldn't withstand the backlash of power and died automatically. After dinner, Wuming sat at his desk in his room. That desk was made by Wuming according to the desk in Nasarek. Wuming sat at the desk with several cards on it. There was the caster rank card printed with the old man, the assassin rank card printed with the killer, and the berserker rank card printed with the berserker rank card. As for the archer rank card, Wuming gave it to Shiro Omiya for long-term storage. In addition to Shiro Omiya's extra archer card, the opponent also has saber, lancer, archer, and rider card with a mount. Wuming put away those cards one by one. Sure enough, these are just probing, the opponent didn't use any of the 3 strongest knight rank cards. Please, Collis. Wuming handed the 3 rank cards to Collis, who was floating beside him. The 3 rank cards automatically floated beside the golden-green dragon horn headdress. Leave it to me, master. Collis replied. Then, Wuming stood up. Since the opponent doesn't want to take the initiative, let's take the initiative. What do you want to do? Collis asked. Of course, I want to use my noble phantasm. Collis calculated the time. Moreover, I'm now a servant, how can I not use my noble phantasm? As he spoke, the corner of Wuming's mouth raised into a smile. The next day, early in the morning, before dawn, Wei Gong Shirlang woke up early. This was a habit left behind by Wuming's training. As soon as he opened the door, Shiro Omiya's pupils shrank. This was because a large amount of strange magic power had filled the entire Wei Gong residence. Just when Shiro Omiya was wondering why he didn't feel it in the room, Wuming's voice came into his ears. "Shiro, come to the backyard." Then, Shiro Omiya sorted out his thoughts and went to the backyard. As soon as he entered the backyard, Shiro Omiya saw a lot of 3-meter-tall golems. Steel golems, plant golems, earth golems, elemental golems, and a large number of different types of golems. A large number of golems filled the huge courtyard of the Omiya mansion, almost filling the entire backyard. Moreover, there were still groups of golems coming out of the backyard's back door. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was standing on a 5-meter-tall magic puppet. Beside him was a strange magic staff that was constantly flashing with light. Beside the golem that Wu Ming was riding, a large purplish-black portal opened, and countless golems came out of it. "Brother, this is..." Shiro Omiya was puzzled. Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Omiya, who had just entered the backyard, and said with a smile, "How is it?" "My relic." Shiro Omiya said excitedly, "Is this your relic?" Wu Ming smiled, then jumped down from the golem and looked at Shiro Omiya. "That's the effect of my relic, the Staff of Anziergen. It can summon a large number of golems that I can control." As Wu Ming combined his relic, the Staff of Anziergen, with the magic workshop, the enchantment of the Staff of Anziergen resonated with Wu Ming's magic workshop. After all, they were enchantments, so it was understandable that they would merge. However, it took some time for the enchantment to merge with the magic workshop. When Wu Ming went to find the gemstone master, Wu Ming began to merge the two. Last night, Wu Ming found that the two were almost merged, and he could proceed to the next step. Wu Ming began to summon his army. The army in Nazarik's underground tomb was not to be underestimated. Because most of the troops in Nasarik were zombies, skeletons, vampires, slimes, and other monsters, Wu Ming did not summon them. Instead, he summoned Graham from the 4th layer of the underground lake, which was called a golem in this world. After Wu Ming communicated with Yair Abed in Nasarik, Yair Abed said that he wanted to protect His Holiness, and he had to come in person. However, Wu Ming refused because he could not meet the current conditions. Through Wu Ming's transformation, all the golems that Wu Ming summoned through the enchantment mutated. Originally, Nasarik only had ordinary golems and steel golems, but now Wu Ming summoned all kinds of golems. Not only did the level increase, but the quality of the golems also improved by leaps and bounds. For example, some special golems, such as the assassination golem, had a small body like a child, but it had the ability to transform. Although its defense was low, its attack power was very high. Just like Assassin, it was responsible for assassinating its master. Another example would be the 5-meter-tall special magic puppet that Wu Ming had ridden before. It was a special kind of magic puppet that specialized in defense. Its attack power and attack speed were quite low, but its defense was frighteningly high. Its body was specially made of tough soil that could automatically recover. Not only did it have super high magic resistance, but it also had a buffering effect on physical attacks. Even sharp blades could not pierce its body because the tough soil on the magic puppet would tightly clamp down on the sharp blades, expel them from the body, and repair themselves. The number of special magic puppets that Silent Cry could summon was the second most. Most of them were ordinary golems that were used as cannon fodder. And because of the enchantment effect of Wu Ming's Staff of Anziergong, those golems only appeared as magical blocks. In other words, those ordinary golems were all projections of Nazarik's golems, and those new golems were purely created by Wu Ming's magical power. If an ordinary magician were to create those golems without the help of external forces, even if he was given a lifetime, he would not be able to create all of them. After that, Wu Ming stopped creating golems with the Staff of Anziergong and closed the portal. One by one, the golems walked out of the backyard until only Wu Ming and Shiro Omiya were left. "Shiro, I will give Rider to you. Is that okay?" Wu Ming suddenly became serious. Shiro Omiya was stunned at first, then said firmly, "Oh. No problem, leave it to me, big brother." Wu-Ming smiled happily. Chapter 117. A large number of magic puppets walked towards the enemy's stronghold that Wu-Ming had found out from the mind of the Berserker card user. It was the center of the area that was destroyed 5 years ago. Because Wu-Ming had cast a spell to disperse all idlers, no one panicked when they saw the magic puppets. When Adlam attacked the Amiya mansion, he had also used the spell on himself and Berserker. Otherwise, with Berserker's terrifying appearance, calling the police would have been considered a light punishment. Soon, almost all the magic puppets had arrived at the wasteland. Since Winterwood City was destroyed 5 years ago, the government had expanded the city on the other side of the wasteland. The huge crater on the other side might have been preserved by Aria's magic hint. Looking at the empty crater in the middle, Wu-Ming narrowed his eyes. According to Zelik and other information, Ainsworth had dabbled in all kinds of magic. However, he had an unparalleled talent in the replacement magic. As a basic magic, the replacement magic was just like the basic magic projection magic. It seemed very simple, but it was actually very mysterious. Shiro Amiya could now use his own power to project a D-grade relic. If he gave it his all, he could even project a C-grade relic. After all, the training that Wu-Ming had given Shiro Amiya for the past 5 years was not for nothing. In addition to lending Shiro Amiya high-level items to analyze, he also let Callis teach Shiro Amiya. Moreover, the rank card that Shiro Amiya was using now was his own future. Even if there was a certain degree of erosion on his body, under Wu-Ming's control, the erosion became a factor that strengthened Shiro Amiya's ability. Let's talk about Julian Ainsworth. As far as Wu-Ming knew, Julian was one of the only 3 orphans who survived the Fourth Holy Grail War. The other 2 were the orphans of the Tsushima family and the orphans of Enbin. When the Tong family and the Enosaka family gave up on the Holy Grail War, Julian did not want to give up, even though he knew that the world had been saved. After that, Julian began to store the souls and personalities of the magicians who died in the Holy Grail War into the automatons, letting these automatons fight each other. Those who survived in the end would be able to fulfill their wishes. Although some of these people knew that he was dead, there were also some who thought that he was still alive. Just like Atlam, who had been deceived by Julian all this time and had returned to the Netherworld in the end. Julian made use of these puppets that had long been under his control to create class cards for the Holy Grail War. The class card was the result of Julian transferring the power of the heroic spirits into the card using the substitution magic. It had to be said that Julian was a rare genius. Although the class card had the flaw of eroding the user, it was worth it to be able to obtain the power of the heroic spirits. However, the great Holy Grail of this world had been destroyed. Therefore, in order to fulfill his wish, Julian had to find an item that could replace the great Holy Grail. That was Mayu. Although it was still impossible to guess why Julian did not make a move in these 5 years or 5 years ago, it did not mean that he had given up on the Holy Grail War. After all, magicians were a group of lunatics, crazier than ordinary lunatics. Since the other party had come to test him, why would he not return the favor? Therefore, there was this scene of the magic puppets surrounding the huge pit. Wu-Ming and Shiro Amiya stood at the edge of the huge pit, fully armed and looking at the huge pit. Wu-Ming glanced at Shiro Amiya, and Shiro Amiya nodded. Then, Wu-Ming spoke. "The guests are here, why is the master not showing himself?" His voice was not loud, but it spread throughout the huge pit. As if in response to Wu-Ming, a different space opened in the middle of the huge pit, and 5 figures walked out. Every figure had their own characteristics. The blue and white armored knight wore full body armor, and his appearance was steady. There were 2 horns on his helmet, and he held an invisible weapon in his hand. The European man with short blonde hair had a noble face. His whole body was wrapped in a special black high-density liquid, and only his head, hands, and part of his body were exposed. He held a red spear in his hand. The blindfolded man with black and purple hair exuded a decadent aura. He wore purple clothes and held a chain in his hand, and a mysterious cloth covered his eyes. He had 2 golden ponytails, and the right ponytail wore a golden horn-shaped accessory. His upper body only covered his chest, and his lower body was covered in golden armor with some red lines drawn on it. Although he was expressionless, he was full of vigor. Then, a young man with short black hair, blue eyes, and black-rimmed glasses with a gloomy face, wearing the uniform of the Suechuan Original Academy High School. Although his physique was thin and his appearance was ordinary, Wuming did not pay attention to him because he was the one who walked in front. Yamato. Shiro Amiya clenched his fist. I really didn't expect that you would take the initiative to attack, Shiro Amiya, caster. No, I should call you Hyunryong-sama. Julian pushed his glasses and said with a gloomy face. Do you know my real name? Archer over there told you. Wuming said with a smile. It's rare that Ligerite is unwilling to tell me your real name. It seems that she was influenced by the Hero King. Julian said with some irritation. Wuming looked at the 4 figures behind Julian and said with some dissatisfaction, Did you erase their feelings? Of course not, Master Xianlong. Although my opponent is you, all I did was rewrite their memories and make them my subordinates. Arya didn't seem to have any misgivings about these people, and directly revealed the truth. Even if Julian said so, the others did not respond at all, as if they were really Julian's men. So, what do you want to do, Julian Ainsworth? Hearing this, Shiro Amiya's eyes were also shocked and looked at Julian. Julian's mouth curved and made a burst of laughter. Of course, it's to save mankind, Hyunryong-sama. Julian said with some madness. Don't you think mankind needs to be saved? The great sage who guides the Uruk humans. I don't think mankind needs to be saved, I only think mankind needs to be guided. Wuming said indifferently. And do you really think a mere Holy Grail war can save the world, Julian Ainsworth? Don't talk nonsense. Julian roared, then said, Don't you also know that the real Holy Grail can fulfill this wish? Hyunryong. Wuming narrowed his eyes. Wuming naturally knew that Meiyu could save mankind, but Wuming would not sacrifice Meiyu. The premise was that this world had already been saved by Zelik, so mankind was no longer in danger. Moreover, Wuming was not like those who would sacrifice their own important people to save the world. Even if he had to sacrifice himself, Wuming would not sacrifice others. So what? Hearing Wuming's words, Julian calmed down. Then, prepare to be crushed by me. Chapter 118. Following Julian's words, the 4 subordinates beside him who had used cards rushed toward Wuming. This was also like an opportunity, and the large number of magic puppets surrounding Ainsworth began to move. Wuming held the staff of Ainsworth in his hand and tapped the ground lightly with the tip of the staff. 2 small teleportation portals that could only allow 1 person to pass through opened. A woman and an old man walked out of the portals. The woman was wearing a purplish-black cake dress. Her entire body was wrapped in clothes, only her face and hands were exposed. Her scarlet eyes exuded a dangerous aura, and her white corpse-like skin was extremely horrifying. The old man was wearing a black and white butler's suit with gloves on both hands and black leather shoes on his feet. His hair and beard were white. Although his face was old, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. The butler's suit could not hide his muscular body, which gave people a sense of security. The 2 of them were Shadia Bradfriend and Sebastian Dean, who had been kept in the staff of Ainsworth by Wuming. Master Wuming. The 2 of them knelt on one knee and saluted Wuming. Get up, Shadia, Sebastian. Wuming gestured for them to get up. After Shadia and Sebastian stood up, Shiro Amiya greeted them. Ms. Shadia, Mr. Sebastian, Shiro Amiya greeted them politely. His attitude was very respectful. It was obvious that they had met before. Ah. Isn't this Brother Shiro? I didn't expect you to have grown so big. Shadio looked at Shiro Omiya with a graceful posture and a joyful expression. Long time no see, Shiro. Sebastian was easygoing and greeted Shiro Omiya. Due to the fact that Wu Ming had transformed into a follower, his body and his noble phantasm were all made of mana, including the staff of Ain's Ergong. The real staff of Anziergen was currently resting in the Dragonist relic on Wu Ming's root dragon. In other words, Shadia and Sebastian were also in the staff of Ainsworth. To Wu Ming, who was absorbing energy from the source, not only did it improve his physical condition, but it also improved his noble relics, including Zaisha and Sebastian, who were inside his noble relic, the staff of Anziergong. 5 years ago, Wu Ming summoned Shadia and Sebastian as servants. After all, Wu Ming didn't want to destroy their roots' sublimation, so he summoned their consciousness in the form of servants. Wu Ming confirmed their status. Wu Ming believed that after their roots' sublimation, they would have a qualitative leap. Later, Wu Ming deliberately let Sebastian see the scene when Shiro Omiya was training himself. Therefore, Sebastian proposed to guide Shiro Omiya, and Wu Ming agreed with a smile. After a period of time, because the two of them wanted to absorb more quickly, Wu Ming removed their servant status and let their consciousness return to their roots, so that they could continue to sleep, so that they could improve better. Wu Ming swiped his finger in the air, and some information was sent to Shadia and Sebastian's mind. Shadia, Sebastian, I'll leave the armored knight and the spearman to you two. Don't embarrass me. Wu Ming ordered. Yes. Wu Ming, Sama. The two replied. Then, Wu Ming looked at Shiro Omiya and said, I'll leave the armored knight to you, is that okay? Shiro Omiya projected 2 swords and walked forward. Leave it to me, big brother. Remember, don't let him remove that blindfold. It doesn't look simple. Understood. Then, Wu Ming looked at Angelica, who was walking toward him, and smiled as if he was reminiscing. Then, he said, you really look like Gil. Of course, Wu Ming was referring to the female Gilgamesh that he had taught. Although I don't want to fight with you, this is Master Julian's order after all. I'm sorry. Angelica apologized first, then said, let me see what you're really capable of, Hero King's mentor, Qianriyong. After that, a large number of golden ripples appeared behind Angelica, and countless noble artifacts appeared. These are all grade B to grade A noble artifacts, right? You really think highly of me. Wu Ming smiled, then raised the staff of Ain's Ergong in his hand. A large number of black and purple holes also appeared behind Wu Ming, and a large number of giant black bone spears gradually appeared from them. Otherwise, I don't have the confidence to defeat you. After Angelica finished speaking, she waved her hand, and countless noble artifacts burst out toward Wu Ming. It seems that you are very confident, then come and try. The staff of Ain's Ergong in Wu Ming's hand flashed, and Wu Ming shouted, magic strength, bone spear, altar. Countless sharp black bone spears burst out toward Angelica. Just like the confrontation between good and evil, the black bone spears and the golden noble artifacts collided with each other, making a thunderous sound. The explosion filled the surroundings of the two, and the battlefield was instantly filled with smoke and dust. Summon Primal Fire Elemental. As the spell was chanted, a huge flame spirit rushed out of the smoke and rushed toward Angelica. Poof! With a thunderbolt, the giant flame sprite was penetrated and disappeared. Angelica was holding a huge spiral sword, and there was still a trace of lightning left on the sword. Angelica let go of her hand, and the spiral sword turned into a golden light and disappeared, returning to the golden ripple. Well done, I don't know if you inherited Hero King's martial arts. Wu Ming said with a smile. Then, Wu Ming's figure slowly disappeared like a phantom. Angelica's eyes narrowed, and she quickly stretched out her hand. A huge shield formed by 7 purple petals appeared in Angelica's hand. Wuming held a spear and stabbed the shield fiercely. The green energy eroded the shield, and the petals on the shield disappeared one by one. Angelica jumped back, and the purple petal shield shattered. Wuming put the white spear behind his back and looked at Angelica with a smile. Good vigilance. Angelica looked at Wuming and said coldly, if you didn't remove the phantom in advance, you might have hurt me. However, Wuming just smiled slightly. Even so, I can hurt you, my child. As soon as he finished speaking, a green thorny vine suddenly appeared in front of Angelica and rushed toward Angelica's head. Angelica abruptly dodged, avoiding this fatal blow. Angelica felt a trace of pain on her cheek and looked at the spear on Wuming's back. The spear was sneaking into the ground along Wuming's heel. This thorny vine was one of the spear's abilities. Wuming looked at Angelica, whose cheek was bleeding, and smiled even more brightly. See, didn't you get hurt? At this moment, Angelica looked at Wuming more cautiously. Chapter 119. On the other side, Satya looked at the spearman in front of her, recalling the information Wuming gave her. The power in this user's heroic spirit card comes from Cuchulainn, the son of sun god Ruger in Celtic mythology. Not only does he have powerful martial arts skills, but he also has a magic spear that will penetrate his heart. After all, that was Cuchulainn, Wuming's old opponent. How could Wuming not know that magic spear? In addition, he also has the powerful original 18 Lune. Although it's affected by his rank, it doesn't mean that he can't use it. If it's you, Satya, I believe it won't be difficult to deal with him. Recalling the words that Wuming left in her mind, Satya blushed and murmured, Wuming, Sama, but even so, Satya didn't let down her guard against the enemy. When they were summoned here, Wuming gave Satya and Sebastian some knowledge about this world, and their magic was called magic in this world. About servants, heroic spirits, the cause and effect of the Holy Grail War, Wuming's fight with Julian, and everything that Wuming thought was necessary. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Kenneth Elmoroy Akibulad, one of the 12 Lords of the Clock Tower. Mr. Akibulad, I'm Satya Bradford. By the way, a mere human is not qualified to be called a lord. Only a great supreme can be called a lord. After hearing Satya's words, Kenneth narrowed his eyes and said, I didn't expect my opponent to be a beautiful and human lady. It's a pity. It seems that your luck isn't very good. Kenneth held the red magic spear in his hand, and the moon spirit essence on his body kept surging. Oh, you're really rude. I really want to catch you and torture you, but since Wuming Sama told me not to embarrass him, I can only kill you. After saying that, she put on her armor. A pinkish-purple armor covered her body, and white swan wings fluttered behind her back. The armor was just like the cake dress that Satya wore, covering every part of her body except for her face. This time, it covered her entire body. Kenneth looked at the strange spear in Satya's hand and said elegantly, It's really fate. I didn't expect you to also use a spear. Satya held the pike and said disdainfully, Please don't compare my pike with your tattered wooden stick. This is a divine artifact bestowed upon me by the Honorable Supreme. Although Kenneth didn't understand what Satya was talking about, it didn't affect him. Then, please prepare for death, Miss Satya. As Nazarik's strongest one-on-one fighter, Satya was still very strong in close combat, even though her combat ability was based on data. Because Kenneth had obtained Cuchulainn's martial arts, he was now locked in battle with Seisha. After a while, the two separated. Your turtle shell is really difficult to deal with, Satya said with a smile. It's good that you know. This is an absolute defense that none of your items have, Kenneth said proudly. I've decided, I'll kill you. Satya flew into the sky. Vermilion Nova. A large flame burned toward Kenneth. The viscous black liquid on Kenneth's body squirmed and formed a shield in front of Kenneth. Satya took advantage of the flame and rushed toward Kenneth. Kenneth made a feint and dodged Satya's attack. Then he rushed forward, and the two began to fight in close combat again. On the other side, Sebastian also recalled the memory we imparted to him. The armored knight's real name is King Arthur. Apart from his armor, his most powerful weapon is the invisible holy sword. After all, Wuming was the silver dragon that once protected Britain, and King Arthur was raised by Wuming himself. Thinking about the holy sword of star that was hidden by the wind, Wuming spent more time in Britain than in other worlds. Therefore, for King Arthur, Wuming was very familiar with it. Because of the blessing of the elves, King Arthur has the power to control the wind. King Arthur used this power on his weapon to form an invisible weapon. In addition, King Arthur's holy sword can also emit the light of the stars that can destroy almost everything. When fighting King Arthur, try not to distance yourself from him. Don't give him time to breathe. It's best to end the battle quickly and kill him in one blow. Sebastian walked toward the armored man with his hands behind his back. The armored man was Julian's father, Zachary Ainsworth. Because Zachary died in the Fourth Holy Grail War, he was resurrected by Julian using replacement magic. Because he was his father, Julian gave the best saber rank card to Zachary, turning him into the legendary King Arthur. Zachary didn't finish his words. His expression couldn't be seen because he was wearing a helmet. Zachary rushed toward Sebastian. He seemed to be holding something in his hand as he slashed at Sebastian. Clang! The sound of metal colliding could be heard. Sebastian raised his arm and blocked Zachary's slash with his rank card. Upon closer inspection, the sleeves of Sebastian's arm that blocked Zachary's slash were covered with dragon scales. Originally, Sebastian was a draken, and he used magic to strengthen his body. Now, I, Sebastian, am able to receive King Arthur's sacred star sword. It's a pity that I have to defeat you here. After saying that, the old man's eyes stared at Zachary like a hunting eagle. Then, he clenched his fist and shot it toward Zachary. Zachary didn't react in time and was sent flying by the punch. Sebastian wiped his fist and put his hands behind his back again. Sir, if you're not serious, you won't be able to fight against me, Sebastian suggested kindly. Zachary seemed to understand. He held his sword with both hands and maintained a certain posture. Sebastian's eyes lit up. Then, he put his hands in front of him and clenched them into fists. The muscular old man assumed a special fighting posture. Come! Both sides were on the verge of breaking out. On the other side, Julian kept releasing replacement magic, destroying one magic puppet after another. It was especially strenuous to destroy those strange-looking magic puppets. After a while, Julian became impatient. Erica, release all the remaining black mud from the Fourth Holy Grail War. As you wish. Chapter 120. Zentong Yenye was weak but frantically attacking the marionette around him, and he looked like berserker. Give back, to me. Zentong Yenye roared and kept swinging the chain in his hand. Shiro Amiya dodged nimbly and remembered what he said to him before. Senpai, if you meet my uncle Zentong Yenye, please kill him. Shiro Amiya looked at Sakura Midu and asked, because your uncle, yes, my uncle, like my brother, died as early as the Fourth Holy Grail War. Now he is just a puppet who acts for his own ideas. Please release him, Senpai, I will be grateful. I know, don't worry, Sakura. After that, Sakura Midu told Shiro Amiya about Zentong Yenye's appearance. It seems that you are Zentong Yenye. Wuming said. Give back, to me. Zentong Yenya's roar was the only response to Shiro Omiya. Has it already reached this point? What a pity. Wei Gongshi closed his eyes. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. Let me release you for Sakura, Zentong Yenya. As if because he heard Sakura Madu's name, Zentong Yenya's movements were sluggish. Shiro Omiya threw a lot of Ganjiangmoi into the air. Shiro Omiya rushed to Zentong Yenya's side. Roar! Zentong Yenya reacted and wanted to release his magic eye immediately. He held the chain in his right hand and grabbed the blindfold in his left hand, and muttered, Self-seal, Dark Temple, Breaker Gorgon. Zentong Yenya took off the blindfold. Shiro Omiya looked at Zentong Yenya's indifferent eyes, and he felt a chill in his heart. After that, Shiro Omiya felt that he could no longer move. Wei Gongshi didn't struggle, and he said faintly, Triple Link Crane Wings Alter. Poochie poochie poochie, the sound of numerous sharp blades stabbing into flesh could be heard. Tong Yenya's body was pierced full of black and white blades. He let out a mournful howl. Large amounts of blood flowed down from Tong Yenya's body. Give me back. Sakura. Jian Tong Yenya collapsed and turned into an automaton. Gradually, Shiro Omiya felt that his body could move again. Then, he walked towards the robot and picked up the card with the rider's name printed on it. Don't worry, I'll take good care of Ing. Zaisha and Kenneth kept on fighting, exchanging blows. However, Zaisha's body was full of wounds. Although Zaisha had a pipette and could recover her HP by attacking the enemy, Kenneth had the Moon Essence potion that could automatically defend himself. Moreover, Zaisha was a computer-generated NPC. Not to mention that her attack pattern was basically fixed, Zaisha basically did not change much. After all, it was always the players who gave the orders. NPCs did not need to think for themselves and only needed to follow orders. Although Zaisha and other NPCs had begun to adapt to the situation and draw inferences from one case, Zaisha was still too inexperienced compared to Kukulin, who had obtained the heroic spirit's power. My lady, it seems that it's time to decide the outcome. Kenneth fainted and retreated far away. TSK. Remove your tortoise shell if you have the ability. Zaisha said a little grumpily. Every time she used magic, Kenneth could always dodge it nimbly. Even if it was a sure-hit spell, Kenneth could still resist it. Especially that Moon Essence potion, it was simply too overpowered. Take this, Miss Vampire. Kenneth held the spear with one hand and placed it beside his body. The scarlet magic spear emitted a thick aura of death. Could this be the noble artifact liberation that Lord Wuming mentioned? Zaisha said warily when she sensed the thick aura of death. Gay Balg, spear of piercing death. Kenneth threw the magic spear with all his might. This feeling of danger. Zaisha suddenly flew into the sky in an attempt to dodge the spear. The magic spear was like a maggot that followed closely behind Zaisha. Damn it! Zaisha cursed inwardly. Then, Zaisha's body emitted a trace of light. Then, under Kenneth's gaze, Zaisha was pierced by the scarlet magic spear and fell to the ground. Kenneth withdrew the magic spear and walked in the direction where Zaisha had fallen. Looking at Zaisha, who was still alive on the ground, Kenneth could not help but sigh. Looks like you're a vampire at the level of the 27th ancestor. What a pity. If you could live a little longer, you might be able to evolve. Zaisha was lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Blood flowed from the corner of Zaisha's mouth as she looked at Kenneth with a smile. Are you so sure that you've won? Kenneth seemed to have discovered something. His eyes shrank suddenly, and he quickly mobilized the moon marrow essence to defend his back. Don't even think about it. Eye of the sky. Zaisha roared and launched the mental interference magic that she learned from Wuming. Kenneth suddenly fell into a trance, and the movement of the moon marrow essence also slowed down. The moon marrow spirit liquid could defend and attack on its own. It could also be controlled by the user. Kenneth felt that there was no need to defend his back. Moreover, he had used up a lot of moon marrow spirit liquid during the battle. Therefore, Kenneth used all of his moon marrow spirit liquid to defend his front. At the moment when moon marrow essence's defense speed was reduced, the white spear pierced through Kenneth's chest, leaving a huge hole in Kenneth's chest. Kenneth fell to the ground with lifeless eyes and turned into a puppet. Zaisha stood up slowly, and her injuries were basically healed at this moment. It's really embarrassing. It seems that I have to complete the sublimation as soon as possible. Yes, Zaisha's true ancestor's body has begun to sublimate. Although Zaisha's heart was destroyed before, she could still survive, but she didn't have the ability to recover so quickly. After all, even if Zaisha and others were transformed into real existences, judging whether they were alive or not still depended on their health bar. As long as the health bar was not empty, Zaisha would not die, but if her heart was destroyed, her health bar would be reduced to 1/3, and she would fall into a weakened state. Zaisha believed that as long as she could sublimate her root, she would be able to eliminate all the disadvantages of being controlled by the game system. Of course, Sebastian was the same, and at this moment, Sebastian was even more sublimated than Zaisha. Looking at Sebastian, who had revealed his half-dragon form, Zachary didn't speak as usual, but it could be seen from his actions that Zachary was struggling to deal with Sebastian at this moment. Sebastian's head turned into a terrifying dragon head, his hands turned into dragon claws, his white gloves have long been destroyed, and a black tail grew out of his back. At this moment, the two were locked in a fierce battle. No, it was Zachary who couldn't separate. Chapter 121. It's a pity that I can't show up in the same form as Supreme Venerables, Seabass said while fighting with Zachary. Yes, at this moment, Seabass could already transform into a dragon, but it was a defective dragon subspecies. Because Sebastian and Wu Ming were of the same race, Wu Ming used his main body to absorb power while Sebastian was affected by Wu Ming, greatly increasing the degree of his sublimation. Compared to Satya, who had yet to fully sublimate, Sebastian could be said to have almost completed his sublimation. If one were to ask who the strongest player in Nasarick was, it probably wouldn't be the character hidden by the Ains Wugong players, but the current Sebastian. It's about time. It's time to end this, Sebastian said in a serious tone. Zachary was also nervous. He instantly released his magical power and blasted Seabass away, and he quickly retreated with the force of the impact. Zachary held the sword with both hands and pointed the hidden weapon in his hand forward. After Seabass rushed to his side, Zachary suddenly thrust forward, and a large amount of magical power formed a storm vortex and rushed toward Seabass. Seabass covered his head with both hands, resisting the storm that contained a large amount of magical power. This was the spare card used by Zachary. With the power of King Arthur, he released the wind enchantment that was wrapped around the sacred sword and turned it into a long-range weapon that could be used to wipe out the enemy, the wind hammer. Although it was a one-time use noble phantasm, that was not Zachary's purpose. The holy sword revealed itself after the wind barrier was removed, and the gorgeous sword body distorted the sunlight. Zachary held the sword with both hands and raised it above his head, and the light began to gather. Excalibur. Then, as Zachary shouted the noble phantasm's true name, a huge light rushed toward Seabass, who was affected by strike air. The light that destroyed everything in front of it hit everything in front of it. Whether it was the ground, trees, or anything else, they were all covered by the huge light. Because Wu Ming sent a large number of puppets were destroyed by this attack. Fortunately, the noble phantasm was aimed at the mountain forest. If it was aimed at the city, not many people in the city would survive. Soon, the light disappeared, leaving behind traces of reclamation on the ground. The puppets that originally surrounded Ein's Balin were destroyed. Zachary gasped for breath. Because of Julian's explanation, Zachary did not underestimate the old man sent by Wu Ming. Sure enough, the old man was a draken. To be safe, Zachary deliberately used Strike Air to create the illusion that Seabass's noble phantasm was his strongest noble phantasm, and then used it in an instant to defeat his opponent. In one fell swoop. Because of Sebastian's troublesome nature, Zachary had used up almost all of his remaining magic power. Noble phantasm's noble phantasm. Just when Zachary thought that he had defeated Seabass, a sense of danger rose in his heart. Zachary immediately raised his sword and slashed backward. However, there was a slashed sound. Both of Zachary's hands were broken, and he was sent flying into the air. Together with the sacred sword, he fell to the ground. Zachary retreated somewhat pathetically, still not saying a word. Zachary looked at Seabass, who was behind him. Seabass was wearing a black butler suit with white gloves on his hands. His hands were behind his back as he looked at Zachary. What a pity. Fortunately, I have the knowledge that Master Wu Ming gave me. I almost got hit by the sacred star sword, Seabass said politely. Sebastian said slowly and politely as he patted the dust off his clothes. As Wu Ming had told Seabass about the characteristics of Excalibur, Seabass could easily tell that Zachary did not want to use Excalibur. With such awareness, it was impossible for Seabass to be hit. Sebastian had already calculated the range of the attack. However, he was afraid that the range of the attack would be too large, so he deliberately moved further away. If not for that, he would have been hit by Excalibur. This was no joke. This was a star-sacred sword, a weapon made by God. At this moment, Sebastian was simply unable to withstand such a powerful Excalibur. Any last words? Seabass asked politely. Zachary remained silent. After a while, he said, "Please save my son. Please." Understood. I'll report to Master Wu Ming. I believe that with Master Wu Ming's magnanimity, he won't reject the agreement between you and me. Please rest in peace. As soon as Seabass finished speaking, Zachary's vision turned black. Then, Zachary lost his sight, followed by all his senses. Seabass wiped his bloody gloves and looked at the headless automaton on the ground. He picked up the card on the automaton. Is this a knight with a sword? Master Wu Ming said that I need this card. I'll keep it first. While the other battles were about to end, the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica was almost over. At that moment, the two were no longer shooting at each other, but fighting in close combat. Angelica was using the weapons in her treasury flexibly, while Wu Ming was using a spear. The two were locked in a fight, but interestingly, the place where the two fought had a lot of green plants. Obviously, this was the effect of the divine spear Yggdrasil and the mythological beast Funbaba. I didn't expect you to be able to use the ability of a lancer as a caster. Angelica frowned and said. I'm a caster. Isn't it good to use magic to enhance strength and speed? Also, don't forget that I'm your mentor. How can I forget the martial arts I taught you? Although she said so, the martial arts used by Angelica and Wu Ming were not similar. Perhaps it was because of the different world. Boom! Hearing the sound, the two of them looked in the direction of the huge golden light pillar. Excalibur. Then Wu Ming turned his head to Angelica. It seems that the other battles are almost over. It seems that our battle is about to end. Wu Ming stood opposite Angelica with a spear in his hand and said with a smile. What nonsense are you talking about? We're tied now, and you're still talking nonsense. Angelica reprimanded. In response, Wu Ming just smiled faintly. Is that so? Do you really think so, Angelica? Enkidu. Enkidu. Chapter 122. Countless silver-white chains burst out from the golden ripples behind Wuming and Angelica. The chains wrapped around Wuming and Angelica, and Wuming and Angelica were hung up. Both of them used the same method to hang each other up in the same posture. Wuming was tied up tightly by Enkidu because he didn't think about dodging at all. Angelica was also tied up tightly by Enkidu because she didn't think about dodging. Wuming, who was tied up in the air, looked at Angelica with a smile and said, "It seems that we are thinking of the same thing." Because Silent Wonder's caster form and Angelica's card form, Archer Gilgamesh, had a lot of divinity, and the extremely rare Enkidu was the biggest nemesis of the two of them. Angelica expressed her dissatisfaction with Wuming's statement. She frowned and said, "You really dare to use a fake, Hyunryong." Those Enkidu were the fake Enkidu that Wuming used on the Berserker Hercules card user. Wuming used Create Advanced Item to create a fake that was comparable to the real thing. Even if it was comparable to the real thing, a fake was a fake, and it could be judged by its aura. And because Wuming released more than one Enkidu, Angelica was more certain that Wuming used a fake. For Angelica, who didn't like and even hated fakes, it would undoubtedly irritate her. Wuming was interested in Angelica's dissatisfaction. "It seems that you and Gil hate fakes very much." Wuming recalled the cute Gil and couldn't help but sigh. "So what do you want to do, Angelica Ainsworth?" Angelica was distressed by Rosin's words. Because Angelica couldn't cause effective damage to Wuming at all. It was true that Archer Gilgamesh's card could be said to be invincible against other servants, but it was too weak against Wuming. After all, Wuming was the person who taught the famous hero King Gilgamesh. Although they were not in the same world, it was much easier to deal with his disciple than to deal with other unknown servants. What's more, Wuming had the spirit of Ain's old gown, which stored a lot of powerful magic, and the nameless spellbook, which stored all the magic in the other world. Wuming was no weaker than Gilgamesh in terms of artillery bombardment. After all, with Gilgamesh's character, she would not remember all the real names of noble phantasm. At most, she would remember the real names of 5 or 6 noble phantasms. Wuming guessed it right. Angelica indeed only knew the real names of a few noble phantasms. That had a great impact on Angelica. As a result, in addition to using noble phantasms, Angelica could only use melee and noble phantasm to attack. In terms of melee, Angelica couldn't gain the slightest advantage against Wuming. Not to mention that Wuming was the disciple of the Lord of the Demon Realm, Wuming's experience over the years was enough to defeat Angelica. After all, Wuming was also known as the strongest knight of the Round Table by virtue of his martial arts. If Noble Phantasm was released, Wuming would also release his Noble Phantasm to fight against her. With the support of a huge amount of magic, Wuming's mythical Yggdrasil was not something that any servant could fight against. "Then, I'll take out a weapon that you can't fight against," Angelica shouted. Then, a golden ripple appeared behind her. However, the speed of the golden ripple was a little slow. Moreover, the number of noble phantasms that appeared in the golden ripple was obviously reduced. There were only a few grade A noble phantasms. It was obvious that the Enkidu created by Silent Wonder was starting to take effect. It was starting to suppress Angelica's magic power. Clang, clang, clang. Angelica fell to the ground with the sound of the chains breaking. Wuming was the same. The sacred lance in his hand floated in the air and automatically moved. It penetrated the chains on Wuming's body. Wuming also fell to the ground. After all, Enkidu was not a powerful weapon in the first place. It was just an ability that had a strong binding effect on divine enemies. Even for those servants who had high strength but did not have divine attributes, as long as they used their strength, they could break it. Then, a golden ripple appeared beside Angelica, and the hilt of a sword was revealed. The hilt was golden, and there was a strange sword guard on the upper part of the hilt. Angelica pulled hard, and a sword that looked like a sword appeared in Angelica's hand. Other than the body of the sword, the rest of the sword was normal. Only the body of the sword was a black cylindrical object. There were 3 parts of the black cylindrical object. The 3 parts were pieced together to form a long tube. There were very red patterns engraved on it, and it looked very mysterious. Is this the Enkidu sword? Wu Ming's expression became serious. As the mentor of the hero king, Gilgamesh, Wu Ming naturally knew about the legendary sword that could split heaven and earth apart, the Enkidu sword. Although it was a name given by Gilgamesh, the sword that did not look like a sword at all lived up to its name. Ea was a god that existed before the creation of heaven and earth in Mesopotamia's mythological system. Needless to say, the function of the sword was needless to say. Angelica held the Enkidu sword high, and the 3 cylindrical blades began to rotate separately. As they rotated, there were traces of red air blades. There were more and more air blades, and they were getting bigger and bigger until they rushed to the sky and parted the clouds. Looking at the majestic huge tornado, Wu Ming, who knew how powerful the weapon was, began to prepare to release the noble phantasm. Ancient and eternal primordial dragon, show yourself and save the world once more. As the noble phantasm was released, a large amount of platinum mist appeared around Wu Ming. Angelica held the Enkidu sword in one hand and focused her gaze. Take this attack. Hyunryong. Enkidu sword. Enkidu sword. Heaven Age. A huge red tornado descended from the sky, rushing towards Wu Ming. Wherever it passed, there were cracks in the space. Some of them even had gaps in the space, revealing mysterious black holes. The platinum mist surged wildly and spread to the surroundings. The mist completely blocked Wu Ming's body, and one could vaguely see a black shadow in the platinum mist. The red sword aura came violently, and the white mist spread quietly. Soon, the 2 of them collided. The seemingly gentle mist exploded with unimaginable toughness. The red sword aura only managed to break through a small part of it before it was blocked by the white mist. What? Angelica stared at the scene in disbelief. Chapter 123. Angelica looked at the unusual white mist and asked in doubt. What the hell is this? How can it resist Ea's attack? Facing Angelica's surprised and doubtful voice, a mute voice sounded from the white mist. This is naturally my noble phantasm, Angelica. Don't think that I can only use magic because I'm a caster. This is my real body. Yes, Wu Ming's noble phantasm was to summon his real body. Because he summoned his real body as a servant, Wu Ming's root dragon's blessing temporarily lost its effect. After all, it was called his real body. At best, it was just a projection of Wu Ming's real body. Moreover, the modern world of the shaped moon had the ability to automatically repair things that should not exist, such as fantasy breeds. As a result, once Silent Cry summoned his entire body or summoned part of his body for too long, there was a high chance that he would be attacked by the world itself. Because Wu Ming had been hurt by the world once, this time Wu Ming learned his lesson and only summoned part of his body. That led to the creation of the platinum mist. The platinum mist was a part of Wu Ming. That was the ultra-low-density decomposition state of Wu Ming's body. Through Wu Ming's decomposition of his body, which could be regarded as indestructible, combined with the skill Holy Breath, it formed the platinum glowing mist. From another point of view, it could be said that the mist was equivalent to Wu Ming's scales. It stood to reason that even so, it shouldn't be able to resist Wu Ming's ultimate release, but it couldn't resist Wu Ming's skill. Formation creation, EXA's a magician, he could create a terrain that was advantageous to him. Formation creation, EXA's a magician, he could create a terrain that was advantageous to him in a short time. As long as there were materials, he could even create a shrine that was once enshrined. Item creation, EXE could make magical items. There was a magic book that contained all the magic in a certain world, and with the skill Otherworld magic, he could make all the items in a certain world. Through the formation, Wuming could transform his current land into a suitable place for himself. Through the creation of the item, Wuming could add the world protection of this item, fog, to the world item. Wuming had used Yggdrasil to fight with Angelica before. The damage he had caused on the land was used as an anchor point to build his base. That was how Wuming was able to build the Uruk land the moment he released his relic. It was also due to the fact that Wuming was able to add the protection of a world-class item to his own items and relic. Just like that, the platinum-colored mist, which had been slightly weaker before, became an existence similar to an inherent barrier under these conditions. It was on par with the sword chi unleashed by the Gweili sword. After all, the only way to defend against a world-defying relic was to offset the damage of the same level or use a relic of the same level. Wuming only knew one relic of the same level, and that was Artoria, King Arthur's relic Avalon. As an existence that could make the holder immortal, unharmed, and indestructible, Avalon was indeed an X-level relic, and it was a barrier relic that was specifically designed to deal with world-defying relic like the Gweili sword. The Gweili sword did not deal with the inherent barrier, but the world itself. As a barrier relic, Avalon just happened to counter the Gweili sword. After all, in the world of the moon, defense was stronger than attack, and it was more than twice as strong. Wuming only knew a few relics of the same level. One of his master Skaha's abilities could open the gate of the kingdom of death and suck things in. Anyone or anything that was not approved by Skaha would lose their life as soon as they entered the gate of the kingdom of death. Other than Wuming, even Cuchulainn had only entered the kingdom of death with Skaha's approval. For example, the sword chi unleashed by the Gweili sword would turn into nothingness as soon as it was sucked into the gate of the kingdom of death. There was also Artorias Excalibur. Wuming believed that as long as the seal on the Excalibur was completely lifted, the sword would definitely be able to resist the Gweili sword. The relic that Wuming was using at the moment, Wuming's body could be said to be an offensive relic, but it could also be said to be a defensive relic. As a dragon that was immune to time and space, the Gweili sword was nothing to him. Of course, Wuming's relic of the caster class did not have any resistance to time and space. Even so, the nature of Wuming's bones would not change, and he could still have a slight effect on a relic like the Gweili sword. Wuming took advantage of this effect and amplified it by mixing it with the protection of the world to resist the Gweili sword. Wuming controlled the white mist to push forward. From time to time, parts of the white dragon's body would appear in the white mist. Sometimes the dragon's claws, sometimes the dragon's tail, sometimes the dragon's horns, and sometimes the dragon's back would appear. In this way, Angelica did her best to release her mana, but she still could not stop the white mist from pushing forward. She knew that as long as the white mist wrapped around her, she would definitely be killed by Wuming. After all, the dragon's shadow that kept appearing in the mist was not to be trifled with. At this moment, from the center of the huge pit, where Julian was surrounded by Wuming's magic puppets, a large amount of mana erupted. A large amount of black mist was advancing in all directions. Even Wuming could feel that the black mist was not friendly. Wuming stopped the white mist from pushing forward, and Angelica subconsciously removed the Gweili sword's wind blade. As for Shiro Amiya, Sebastian, and Satya, who had already completed their mission, they hurriedly retreated. Wuming shrank the white mist to a range of 10 meters and lifted Wuming into the sky. Wuming did not pay attention to Angelica, who had already retreated. After all, if he could defeat her once, he could defeat her countless times. Wuming started observing the black mist and discovered that it was the same thing that destroyed the winter wood when Wuming had just arrived in this world. So this is a product of the Ainsworth family. Wuming frowned. Just as Wuming was about to use the method he had used to seal the black mist, something incredible appeared behind the black mist. Black sludge crazily rushed over. It was a large amount of mana condensed into a solid, formless, but dense mana essence. However, its black color and crazy aura were truly unflattering. Just as the black mud approached Wuming, Wuming sensed something familiar. This is... Chapter 124. The large amount of black mud in front of Wuming gave Wuming a familiar feeling and aura. It was the aura of a major origin. It was the origin of the minor origin where Wuming's main body was located, the place where Wuming was born. Although Wuming had never seen a major origin and could not understand why there was such a thing in the origin, it did not mean that Wuming did not recognize it. As if it was filled with resistance and disgust, Wuming frowned as he looked at the incoming black mud. Ha 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 ha, Hyunryong, let's see how you block it. Julian stood in the black mud and laughed maniacally as he looked at Wuming. At that moment, Julian was standing on a platform made of black mud, looking at Wuming and laughing without restraint. Tisk, Wuming spat unhappily. For some reason, Wuming just did not like the black mud that had the aura of his hometown. It was as if it was an innate resistance, as if it was a natural enemy. That was Wuming's evaluation of the black mud. Sorry for the trouble. Wuming rode the white mist and descended from the sky to the ground without black mud, meeting with Shiro Amiya and the others. Lord Wuming. Satya and Sebastian handed the class cards they had obtained from the water to Wuming. Wuming put away Saber and Lancer's class cards, then Wuming said to the two of them, "Thank you for your hard work." "Thank you for your hard work. Zaisha, Sebastian, go back and rest." "Not at all. I've completed the mission given to me by Lord Wuming in such a sorry state. I've sinned." Satya became serious, which was rare for her. "Although I wasn't in a difficult situation, I was unable to quickly defeat the opponent assigned to me by Sir Wuming." "Please punish me, Sir Wuming," Sebastian said. Wuming chuckled and shook his head. "You guys are still treating me like an outsider. Forget it, I'll remember this and go back first." "Understood, Lord Wuming." Then, Wuming opened the portal and let the two of them in. Immediately after, Shiro Amiya also wanted to give his rank card to Wuming, but he was stopped by Wuming. "Take them." Wuming placed the 5 job class cards in front of Shiro Amiya. "Big brother. What are you doing?" Shiro Amiya asked in confusion. Wuming had a resolute expression on his face as he looked at Wei Gong Shiro. "Now, I need you to go back and fulfill your wish to the Holy Grail and take Meiyu away." Shiro Amiya was even more confused. "Let's not talk about the Holy Grail's wish. What about you, big brother?" "I have to clean up the mess made by Julian, and I have to do it." After all, he felt like he was an enemy. Even Wuming was affected by that feeling. "I won't explain the details to you. In short, follow the steps on this blueprint and quickly take Meiyu away. Julian's means are more than that." With that said, Wuming summoned a piece of parchment out of thin air. That was an indestructible manuscript that could be recorded with magical power, and it was set to be indestructible. Wuming stuffed the parchment into Shiro Amiya's hand, and then put 5 cards into his hand. "Now, Saber, Lancer, Caster, Assassin, Berserker, plus your Archer and the Rider you just got, 7 cards have been collected." Wuming turned around, walked a few steps, and looked at Shiro Amiya with his head tilted. "Although it's only been 5 years, it's been a really good time. Apologize to Meiyu for me, we have to be separated for a while." "Big brother." Shiro Amiya held 6 cards in one hand and the parchment in the other, gritting his teeth. Although he didn't quite understand what the black mud was, it didn't mean that he didn't know the danger of the black mud. His nerves had been tense as if he was afraid of the black mud. "I understand, big brother. I wish you good luck in martial arts." With that, Wei Gong Shiro drove his heroic spirit state, which had yet to be deactivated, back to his home. "Well, then, let's get started. A large amount of white mist was produced from Wuming's sleeves, and it quickly rushed toward the black mud. In an instant, like a flame meeting water, the two had a violent reaction. Explosions occurred frequently at the boundary between the fog and the black mud, and the sound of explosions continued to ring out. Sure enough, I and it are natural enemies. Only I can defeat it, and only it can defeat me. After saying such a strange thing, Wuming directly condensed the white mist. In an instant, the white mist turned into a white and sacred dragon. Roar! The dragon roared, then opened its big mouth, and a lot of white flames spurted out. The black mud was burned, and the sound of the explosion was endless, and it kept rushing toward the white dragon. At this moment, the black mud has been wrapped around the white dragon's body. Like a mythical battle, the residents of Winterwood City saw this scene. The sacred dragon fought against the dirty and turbid black mud, and the black mud wrapped around the dragon and completely wrapped it. After a while, as if digested, the white dragon disappeared, and the black mud was full of vitality, constantly surging. Ha 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 ha. See, Hyunryong, this is power, this is God, this is faith, this is everything, this is the omnipotent instrument that can save mankind. Julian stood in the open space, his face black, his eyes red, and he kept roaring. I see. Wuming's figure emerged from the black mud, and the black gas gradually eroded Wuming. Is this the reason why you want to make a wish? How foolish. Yes, in Wuming's view, Julian's mind was not only contaminated by the black mud, but even his soul was as if it had been dyed with black. Simply put, there was no saving him. But Julian was a 16-year-old boy, how could he have been corrupted for so long? There was only one answer. Your real identity is actually the first head of the Ainsworth family, Darius Ainsworth. Julian stopped laughing and looked at Wuming with a vicious gaze. As expected of Lord Hyunryong, you actually saw the truth. As he spoke, Julian changed his appearance. His hair was still black, and his eyes were still blue. His hair looked as if it had not been tidied for a long time. His upper body was very cool, and his lower body was wearing a pair of casual pants, revealing his leg hair, and a pair of flip-flops. In addition, his cheeks had become slightly similar to Julian's. At this moment, Julian had completely changed from one person to another. Is this also a replacement magic? Wuming asked. That's right. Lord Hyunryong, this is a technique I am proud of, although I am surprised that Julian was able to hold on without being replaced by me. Julian, no, Darius, said. So that's how it is. Even his soul has been corrupted by you. Wuming already understood what was going on. Darius had used an unknown spell technique to swap his personality and soul with Aria's, but for some unknown reason, he was unable to completely swap with Aria, which was why this situation had occurred. But it's about time. In another 1 or 2 years, I should be able to take over this body, Darius said calmly. Then, he looked at Wuming. Lord Hyunryong, your power has been coveted by me for a long time. Seeing that you are about to disappear, I won't hold back. Wuming frowned. It seemed that Darius wanted to turn his power into a class card. Wuming smiled slightly. Then, he said, you are still too naive, Darius Ainsworth. My power is not that easy to obtain. After that, the black mud seemed to explode from the inside, and white mist leaked out. Explosions occurred one after another until the black mud was almost completely destroyed. Darius did not show any expression toward the black mud that was about to disappear. As if he saw Wuming's doubts, Darius explained, these items are no longer important. Even if Lord Hyunryong can destroy them, what can you do? You are about to disappear. Darius looked at the illusory Wuming. Although Wuming wanted to use himself as bait to destroy the black mud, the corrosion of the black mud had already reached the body of Wuming's follower. Wuming, who had reached his limit, was about to disappear. I have already arranged for Angelica to retrieve the Great Holy Grail. If there is a chance to see it again, it will be in the world after I make a wish. Goodbye, Lord Hyunryong. Wuming did not say anything about Darius' speech. He just looked at the direction of the Amiya mansion. After discovering that the spell he gave to Shiro Amiya was activated, Wuming turned into particles and dissipated. Chapter 125. Wuming opened his eyes and looked at the magical scene in front of him. Wuming was in a colorful space. Wuming could feel that this was the space inside the Great Holy Grail. Just like Shiro Amakusa, Wuming also entered the Great Holy Grail at this moment. Wuming could clearly feel that he didn't disappear, but was absorbed by the Great Holy Grail. Meiyu absorbed him into her body. What the hell is that black mud? Wuming frowned and recalled the black mud that he destroyed. Wuming originally thought that the black mud was contaminated with the filth of his hometown, but after Wuming was swallowed by the black mud, Wuming discovered that the black mud was the same as him. In short, it was like a brother to Wuming. And the feeling between the two of them was like two brothers who became enemies in order to inherit the family business. It was full of a melodramatic atmosphere. Wuming shook his head and decided to put this matter aside for the time being. Then, Wuming thought of the previous battle. Wuming floated in the air, helplessly holding his forehead, and said, "Really, there are too many drawbacks of the servant's body." The servant, as a deteriorated version of the heroic spirit, was used as a tool by human magicians. Not only was their power limited by their rank, but they would also be absorbed by the Great Holy Grail when they left the battlefield. As far as Wuming knew, the Great Holy Grail absorbed the servant's soul, but Wuming believed that the Great Holy Grail absorbed the servant's mana. No matter what, the servant was also a great figure in history. How could a mere soulfall ritual absorb their soul? And because Wuming put his entire consciousness into the body of a caster, it led to Wuming and his mana body being absorbed by the Great Holy Grail. I don't know how Meiyu and Shiro are doing. Sigh, I'm really unlucky, now I can't even return to my body. Wuming complained. Wuming, as a servant, could rely on his special ability to break the contract and return to his seat, but now that he was in the Great Holy Grail, he couldn't do it now. At the very least, he had to wait until the Great Holy Grail was made a wish. Great Holy Grail, please create a world where Meiyu can live normally. Suddenly, a voice came here, and then the colorful light around him began to move, constantly changing. This is Shiro's voice. Wuming was very sure that it was Wei Gong Shiro's voice. Moreover, this was Meiyu's body, which was also the body of the Great Holy Grail. However, this wish was full of strange things. Wuming clearly asked Shiro Amiya to take Meiyu away from this world through the Great Holy Grail's wish, but Shiro Amiya made a wish to create a world where Meiyu can live normally. Could it be that Angelica is already here? Wuming said uneasily. After taking a deep breath and exhaling, Wuming calmed down. At this moment, Wuming somewhat doubted whether the restraining force signed a contract with Wuming to cheat him. Although Wuming voluntarily became a heroic spirit, after all, it was to repay the restraining force's favor and to repay the restraining force. The restraining force allowed Wuming to absorb energy from the source of the world. At this moment, the many restrictions of the servant made Wuming somewhat speechless. Forget it, anyway, the heroic spirit palace has already been built, and I have already left my name on the seat. Then, Wuming looked at the colorful lights around him that kept changing. I wonder how the Great Holy Grail will fulfill this wish. The ordinary Great Holy Grail was just a crystal that stored a large amount of mana. In other words, the Great Holy Grail could do anything that could be done with magic. However, the Great Holy Grail might not be able to fulfill wishes that were beyond the scope of magic. For example, reviving the dead, reversing time, traveling to parallel worlds, and so on. These were all within the scope of magic. However, Meiyo's Shitsuki family was an exception. Their family's godchild could be regarded as the true Great Holy Grail, the true omnipotent wishing machine that could fulfill all wishes. However, Wuming estimated that the wish to create a world might not be fulfilled even by magic. Even if it could be fulfilled, the mana in Meiyu, the Great Holy Grail, would not be enough to support the wish to create a world. That was why Wuming was curious about how this wish could be fulfilled. I guess it would be to travel to parallel worlds. After all, Meiyu, the Great Holy Grail, who did not have enough mana to create a world, would only be able to travel to a parallel world where Meiyu could live an ordinary life under the system's judgment. Stopping his wild guesses, Wuming waited quietly. Taking advantage of this moment of leisure, Wuming began to meditate again. After all, this was the interior of the Great Holy Grail. How many people could enter? After a moment, 7 class cards appeared inside the Great Holy Grail and floated to Wuming's side. Wuming opened his eyes and looked at the 7 glowing class cards. At this moment, the class cards were being baptized by the Great Holy Grail and had undergone an unknown change. However, Wuming could determine that apart from the Berserker class card, the other class cards would no longer have the effect of corroding the owner's mind when Dream Summon, install, was used. Even if it was the Berserker class card, it would only give the user a berserk state where they would lose their mind if used for a long time. Has it begun? Wuming said calmly. After a moment, this space, together with Wuming and the 7 class cards, began to undergo an illusory change. This was the precursor of traveling to another world. In an instant, Wuming's vision was covered by a white light and he lost consciousness. Outside, Shiro Omiya supported his body that was being synchronized with the Nameless Archer class card and half-knelt on the ground. On the opposite side, Angelica was holding the parting sword EA. Together with Shiro Omiya, she watched the Great Holy Grail's wish succeed. Great, my wish has been fulfilled. Shiro Omiya said weakly. Angelica turned to Shiro Omiya and said, since the Great Holy Grail has fulfilled your wish, the mission is considered a failure. However, Lord Julian said that if possible, I will bring you back alive. Golden ripples appeared behind Angelica's back. Since you used the inherent barrier to resist the parting sword and didn't die, I will follow Lord Julian's instructions and bring you back alive. After saying that, a few silver chains shot out from the golden ripples behind Angelica and rushed towards Shiro Omiya. Is this the end? Shiro Omiya wanted to get up, but his body couldn't stand. Just as Enkidu, Heavenlock, was about to touch Shiro Omiya, a strange force interfered with the trajectory of Enkidu, Heavenlock. What? Angelica said in surprise. I'm sorry, little girl. I promised someone's request to protect this kid. A strong old man appeared out of thin air and said to Angelica. Who are you? Angelica questioned. He's just a useless old man, Zelrich said. Wuming had asked Zelik to take care of Shiro Omiya and Meiyu. Wuming couldn't stay here forever. He just didn't expect to leave so early. This was also why Wuming wasn't worried about Shiro Omiya. Then, I'll take this kid away first. After saying that, a special wave appeared around Zelik. Shiro Omiya and Zelik disappeared from Angelica's sight. Angelica was silent for a moment before leaving the Omiya mansion. Chapter 126. Not knowing how long it took, Wuming woke up. Ah! What's the situation? Wuming found that his body disappeared at this moment, only his consciousness was left. Wuming turned into a card, and it was the most familiar existence to Wuming. I became a class card. Yes, Wuming became a class card at this moment. Because of the Holy Grail and the class card, Wuming was affected by the class card and the Holy Grail, and his magical power was compressed and transformed into a caster class card by this true universal wishing machine. Wu Ming could clearly feel that he was now in a mirror-like space similar to an inherent enchantment. This mirror-like space was the same as the outside world, except that there was no life, everything else was exactly the same. It turned into a golden card that floated in a quiet and uninhabited place, emitting a few sounds. Although it's a bit different, the scene here seems to be Winterwood City. As a place where he lived for 5 years, even if some buildings or terrain changed, Wu Ming could clearly recognize that this was indeed Winterwood City. The card floated to a tree and lay down quietly. This should be the mirror world of another parallel world. If I'm not an exception, then the other 7 class cards should also be in such a space. Wu Ming reasoned. This can ensure that no one will get a class card and use it indiscriminately. I just don't know how Meiyu is doing, Shiro Amiya. Zelik should have saved him, Zelik shouldn't go back on his words, probably. Subsequently, Wu Ming began to explore his current state. Wu Ming found that he should be able to materialize. Wu Ming began to try to materialize. Just as Wu Ming tried to materialize, a magic circle suddenly appeared in the open space in front of Wu Ming. A white light flashed, and a tomboy appeared in place. Rose-colored short hair and pupils, a black suit, and a tear mole under her left eye. She was wearing a reddish-brown suit, earrings on her ears, black leather gloves on her hands, and a long bag on her back. That's Lune Rune. Wu Ming saw that there were Lune runes on the tomboy's earrings and gloves. As the existence who mastered the original 18 Lune, he naturally recognized the appearance of other ordinary Lune runes. As if someone broke into his territory, Wu Ming instantly materialized. She looked the same as before, white robe, short blonde hair, golden pupils, and dragon horn ornaments on her head, but there was some magic power spreading from her body. Bizet looked at the servant in front of him and frowned. She seems different from the previous servants. After hearing Bizet's words, Wu Ming spoke. Can you please tell me what's going on here? Let me tell you something. Bizet looked as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He clenched his fists and maintained a fighting posture against Wu Ming. Please calm down, Mississippi. I don't mean any harm. After hearing Wu Ming's words again, Bizet thought for a moment, then put down his fists, but his body still maintained a tense state. After all, the other party was a servant. Even if she was an existence that could be communicated with, she couldn't be sure that she was harmless to humans. Please don't worry. If I had attacked you, you would have died without a complete corpse. Wu Ming smiled and said something that made one's hair stand on end. It seems that you are a servant with a powerful real name, but you can't be too sure about that. It's still not certain who will win. Bizet said, unwilling to admit defeat. Oh, is that so? Do you want to fight? Wu Ming was also a person who didn't admit defeat. Since the other party said so, then he would play with her. After that, Wu Ming stretched out his hand, and a golden twisted scepter appeared in Wu Ming's hand. Enhance, increase, as the spell was recited, a large number of giant flames, giant magic bullets, giant ice blades, giant water guns, and other giant elemental attacks burst out toward Bizet. Bizet quickly moved, his hands with black gloves clenched. As the spell was recited, Bizet's gloves lit up with the light of Lune magic. He frequently used fighting skills, and the elemental attacks launched by Wu Ming were scattered by Bizet one by one. A green vine broke out from the ground under Bizet's feet and quickly wrapped around Bizet's legs. Bizet's face froze, his feet shook, and found that the vine was not broken. He immediately hit the vine with both hands. The vine was broken, and Bizet rushed toward Wu Ming. Wu Ming smiled, and his scepter flashed. Bizet punched Wu Ming, and like passing through a phantom, Bizet went through Wu Ming. A phantom. Was it just now, or from the beginning? Bizet thought. Then, several Wu Ming appeared around Bizet, and with a wave of his scepter, 4 huge elemental spirits appeared. Summon primal four elemental. The four elemental spirits of earth, water, fire, and wind roared around Bazette. Bazette frowned. This guy, is he caster? And these magic tricks that I have never heard of, are they kamikaze's magic? Huge rocks, surging water, exploding flames, and fierce gales all attacked Bazette. Loon runes were used by Bazette to resist the four powerful magic attacks. Wuming drew a rune with one hand, and several loon runes appeared, and Bazette's loon runes were instantly ineffective. What? Bazette cried out in surprise. Although his loon magic was not the best, he was still a top-notch talent in using loon magic. But the opponent could break his loon magic in an instant. It seems that the opponent also mastered loon runes, maybe it's the original 18 loon. That was Bazette's last thought before he lost consciousness. Wuming removed the four elemental spirits and looked at Bazette, who fainted on the ground. Young people just can't take a beating, Wuming said with the look of an otherworldly expert. Then, he began to study the magic that the opponent used when he came here. Collis, have you analyzed what magic the opponent used? The dragon horn on Wuming's head made a sound. The analysis is complete. The cold voice continued, a specific space transfer technique, specifically used for space transfer in the mirror world. Then Collis said, with all due respect, Master, you should learn the basic magic of this world. In response, Wuming smiled awkwardly. It was obvious that Collis had mentioned this suggestion more than once. The only magic that Wuming mastered in the model moon world was the loon magic, and the Yggdrasil, world tree, system magic from another world. Compared to this kind of magic that leaned towards auxiliary analysis, Wuming was better at combat magic. This was also the reason why magicians in the type moon world were called magicians, because they basically studied the mysterious existence of magic. Only people like Jie Jili, who was his master in the 14 Horsemen War, were called magicians. Magicians were magicians who used magic as props, and were usually looked down upon by other magicians. Mama, don't I have you, Collis? Wuming smiled. Collis sighed as if she had heard Wuming say the same answer many times. I really don't know if this is my honor or my failure. It was normal for the magic attire to be needed by the master. If the master no longer needed the magic attire, it meant that the magic attire was useless to the master, and was a waste. From the perspective of the magic attire, Collis hoped that Wuming would use her. From the perspective of a family, Collis hoped that Wuming could become able to explain everything without relying on Collis. This was also why Collis didn't know if she was honored or failed. Anyway, let's go out first. Chapter 127. Wuming relied on the data provided by Collis to teleport and successfully left the mirror world. The moment Wuming came out, the mirror world collapsed. Of course, Wuming also brought Bazette out. After all, Wuming still needed this local magician, from this world, to be his guide, to ask for directions. It seems that this mirror world relies on my power to maintain its existence, Wuming said. According to the analysis of the mirror world's collapse, the mirror world exists because of the existence of the job class card. Because Master left, the job class card's mirror world directly collapsed. After listening to Collis' explanation, Wuming looked around. This was a forest. There was an empty space in the middle of the forest, which was the same as the mirror world Wuming was in. A forest again. I really do have an affinity with forests, Wuming said. He then looked at Bazette, who was lying on the ground. Then, I'll have to wake her up first. After a while, Bazette was leaning against a tree. A bowl of water splashed onto Bazette's face. Bazette instantly woke up and hurriedly stood up, maintaining a defensive posture. No need to be so nervous, Wuming was still holding the staff of Ains Urgong as he spoke to Bazette. now you can see that if I want to do something, you won't be able to stop me." Bazette seemed to have understood the situation and simply stopped resisting. "First, who are you? Then, please explain the situation of this world to me, and why did you come to that mirror world just now? Also, you seem to know about the job class card. What's going on here?" Bazette was quite honest. He gave up on lying and keeping his mouth shut and told Wu Ming everything in detail. The tomboy's name was Bazette, and her full name was Bazette Fraga McCreamies. She was a member of the Magic Association and had inherited the Gods Holder family. Currently, the Magic Association had sent her on a mission to retrieve job class cards. This world was indeed a parallel world to the Moon world. There were also magicians, 27 ancestors, various clans, and so on. Basically, it was similar to what Wu Ming understood in Meiyo's world. Class card, a special magic attire that suddenly appeared in the spiritual vein of Japan's Winterwood City. It could trigger the power of heroic spirits. After the Magic Association detected the anomaly in Winterwood City, they discovered the existence of the class card. The appearance of the rank card would be accompanied by the appearance of the mirror world, which was where Wu Ming had been before. But so far, only 2 class cards had appeared, and they seemed to appear periodically. Bazette was the person in charge of retrieving the cards. So far, the 2 cards that had appeared had been retrieved by Bazette alone. Therefore, after the appearance of Wu Ming's card, the Magic Association had once again sent out an expert to retrieve the cards. It was just that they didn't expect Wu Ming's card to have its own consciousness. According to Bazette, the 2 class cards that she had retrieved before were similar to the existence of the Shadow Servant, which had no consciousness and could only attack instinctively. Once stepping into the mirror world where the class card existed, the class card would materialize and attack the intruder. According to Bazette, the 2 cards that were retrieved were Lancer and Archer. Lancer's corresponding heroic spirit was Ireland's Son of Light, Ku Churin, and Archer's corresponding servant could not be determined yet. According to the other party's description of Archer's attack method, Wu Ming could determine that Archer's class card was Shiro Omiya's heroic spirit. That is to say, the place where I am now is indeed the parallel world where Meiyu can live an ordinary life. Since the class card has come here, then what about Meiyu, Wu Ming thought. Master, according to the other party's description of the periodic appearance of class cards, it is likely that Miss Meiyu will appear after all the class cards have appeared. Collis said to Wu Ming telepathically. Very likely. So, Miss Bazette, how did you defeat those servants with noble phantoms? Wu Ming was very curious about this point. According to the battle between Wu Ming and Bazette, Wu Ming did not think that Bazette could defeat a servant by herself. Otherwise, she would not have been captured by Wu Ming. Either there was someone behind her, or, you have your own trump card. Wu Ming said. There was no other possibility, but Bazette didn't show it when he was fighting with Silent Wonder with real swords and guns. If Wu Ming did not stop at the end, Bazette might not even have ashes left. In that case, it was impossible for Bazette to have a trump card. Bazette fell into silence. Why, don't you want to say it? Wu Ming smiled. Forget it, even if I don't say it, as a magician of the gods, you will definitely use the magic of memory manipulation to look through my memory. Bazette was somewhat desperate. Wu Ming was a little bit dumbfounded. So this is the truth that you didn't hide from me. It seems that I really have the ability to control memory. That is the magic of Yggdrasil, World Tree. Who knows what kind of magic is set up in the game to control memory? I have this. As he spoke, Bazette took out the long, cylindrical pouch on his back and handed it to Wu Ming. Wu Ming took a look and immediately understood. There were 3 stone ball-shaped objects in the bag. These were all noble phantoms that existed in the world. Bazette told him about her situation. This stone ball was not only a magic suit, but also a noble phantasm called Fragarak, also known as Backlight Sword. Backlight's sword was the short sword of Ruger mac Esalen, the god of war in Celtic mythology. Legend has it that this sword did not require the user to attack. It would unsheath itself and kill the enemy before they could draw their sword. Therefore, this noble phantasm had another name, Severer, which was why it was called the Sword of Question and Answer. It was an extremely rare noble phantasm. It was only passed down by the God's Keeper family. It had a specific condition, which was that it would only be awakened when the opponent used their trump card. According to legend, Backlight's sword would hit the opponent first after it was activated. It was a powerful noble phantasm that attacked later. Its normal form was a sphere, which was carried by Bazette everywhere. The production method was for Bazette to drip his own God's Keeper blood on the ore and place it in the basement for a month with a secret method. According to Bazette, this weapon that was both a noble phantasm and a magic suit could only be made 10 per year. So that's how it is. Is this the God's Keeper clan? Because I didn't feel that you were using your trump card, Backlight's sword could not be awakened and I couldn't use it. Even if I used it forcefully, it could only be used as a powerful magic bullet. Bazette looked at Wu Ming deeply. He was indeed a god magician to be able to knock her unconscious without using his trump card. That was just a coincidence. Who asked you to use the loon magic in front of me? One of the magic tricks I'm best at is the loon magic, said Wu Ming. So, what are your plans now, Miss Bazette? Chapter 128. If you want to let me go, you don't have to say that. Bazette said calmly. Wu Ming smiled and said, well, I'll let you go, but you're not allowed to report my existence to the higher-ups. Bazette frowned and then said, I'm here to perform the task of recovering the rank card. If I don't report your existence, then what about your rank card? Regarding this point, Wu Ming had long thought of it. Create green item, advanced item creation. Wu Ming took a card with nothing printed on it and handed it to Bazette. Then Wu Ming said, you tell those higher-ups that the heroic spirit power inside the rank card went berserk and self-destructed. After the explosion, only this rank card was left. Bazette looked at the rank card and put it away. Although this reason is barely passable, what about the self-destruct? For Bazette's question, Wu Ming replied, leave it to me, you don't have to worry about it. After discussing the matter, Bazette left directly. Wu Ming used fly and floated to the sky. Black hole. The ground where the mirror world was previously located was smashed and sucked in by the black hole used by Wu Ming, leaving a large pit in place. Of course, Wu Ming didn't want to cause any panic. After all, Wu Ming didn't want to cause any panic. Then, Wu Ming left directly. Bazette had returned. She had already set up a barrier around the forest for idle people to disperse. Before ensuring that the crater was repaired, ordinary people would not be able to enter. Bazette looked at her shriveled long cloth bag, the backlight sword, and it was taken away by Wu Ming. But in exchange, Wu Ming took out an engraved stone, which was engraved with a rune second only to the 18 primordial rune. It's not a loss, and it seems like the other party is easy to talk to. However, we still have to find out the other party's real name. Golden hair and golden eyes. I remember that it's similar to Mesopotamia's mythological system. I'll start looking for it when I get back. After saying that, Bazette left again. The silent forest was originally very quiet at night, but because of the destruction, it became even more eerie and terrifying. However, no one would come here. 3 days later, Wu Ming sat on a huge rock on Yuanzhong Mountain, a mountain next to Winterwood City. There are no traces of Mei Yu and the other 5 class cards. Could they have appeared in other areas, or would they appear according to time? In the past 3 days, Wu Ming had explored the entire Winterwood City, including some of the areas around Winterwood City, but he still hadn't found any information related to the class card or Mei Yu. The only place with any information was the underground of Yuanzhong Mountain. Wuming could feel that there was a huge amount of magic sealed below, and his initial guess was that it was the Great Holy Grail. Although the magic was abundant, its aura was different from Mayo's. Therefore, Wuming didn't think that the Great Holy Grail below was Mayu. Maybe it's the Great Holy Grail of this world, Wuming thought. Because he was unfamiliar with this place, Wuming had been using the stealth spell of Yggdrasil to effectively avoid Winterwood City's magicians. Wuming didn't want to expose his identity, so Wuming didn't directly break the seal of the Great Holy Grail under Yuanzhang Mountain. However, Wuming was still worried about Mayu, so he decided to explore the Great Holy Grail under Yuanzhang Mountain. However, the test results showed that it was just an ordinary magic crystal without any signs of life, which was why Wuming was sitting there so leisurely. Then, since I'm free, I can study this backlight sword. As he spoke, Wuming opened the golden ripples and spat out a fist-sized stone ball. Wuming still remembered what Bassett had said 3 nights ago when he was being interrogated by Wuming. If the enemy uses a trump card, the backlight sword will produce a wave, and I can use the backlight sword's late to attack first condition to cancel the enemy's attack and hit the enemy first. But if the enemy doesn't use a trump card, the backlight sword won't be effective and can only be used as an ordinary C or D grade magic bullet relic. Coincidentally, Wuming did not think that using the Yggdrasil, World Tree, spell was a trump card. It was just a simple spell, so it could not cause Bassett's backlight sword to be activated. Moreover, other than the backlight sword and combat skills, Bassett was only good at Lune magic. That was why Wuming was able to break Bassett's Lune magic in an instant and hit Bassett's head, knocking him unconscious. Of course, Bassett still knew basic magic such as dispelling idle people. Wuming picked up the stone orb, and his mana seeped into the stone orb as he observed it. Callis, provide assistance. Yes, master. As soon as Wuming's voice fell, a gush of mana emerged from his body and attached to the stone ball. Wuming closed his eyes and felt the space inside the stone ball. After a while, smoke rose from the stone bowl. As time passed, more and more smoke rose. In the end, the stone ball was like a broken machine, smoking all over. Wuming opened his eyes and threw the broken stone ball on the ground. As expected of a late start but early start relic, a relic passed down from the god's generation to the present. Wuming relied on Callis' help to study the knowledge of reversing causality in the stone bowl. Wuming found that causality was not that easy to understand, so after completely destroying the backlight sword, he gave up on studying it. The backlight sword, as the name suggested, was a sword that reversed time, the divine sword of the sun god Luge. I'm really curious about the relationship between the Godsholder family and those gods. By the way, the Godsholder family didn't refer to a single family. Instead, it referred to the families that had passed down the mysteries of the gods. They stored the mysteries of the gods in the form of pathogens in their blood and passed it down through their descendants. Moreover, the mysteries passed down by the gods' generation differed greatly. For example, the backlight sword that Bassett was able to create, the Fragarak of the war god was only passed down the method to create it, not the relic itself. By dripping blood on a special ore and placing it in a basement for a month, the backlight sword would automatically be created. But even with such simple conditions, it was possible to create a relic that could even kill a servant for a human to use. Forget it, this is giving me a headache. Let's not think about this for now. I have to find a place to stay. After all, he did not know when the other class cards in Mayu would appear, so he had to find a place to stay first. Chapter 129. After Wuming left Yuanzhang Mountain, he walked on the streets of Winterwood City. At this moment, Wuming had already turned his hair black. After all, he wanted to keep a low profile. A blonde foreigner was always very conspicuous. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar streets of Winterwood City, Wuming sighed. Thinking about it, I really miss it. After all, Wuming had lived a peaceful life for 5 years. With Wuming's identity, he probably wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life for the rest of his life. Wuming also went to the original address of the Amiya mansion. It was just a wasteland in this world. Moreover, Winterwood City in this world wasn't destroyed. Wuming investigated the Great Holy Grail and learned that the magic power of the Great Holy Grail had existed for nearly 70 years. In other words, the Fourth Holy Grail War didn't happen at all. Moreover, the Great Holy Grail had been sealed and turned into a simple magic crystal under Yuanzhang Mountain. Although he didn't know why this world didn't have a Holy Grail War, it was undoubtedly a good thing, whether it was for Wuming or Meiyu. A world without a Holy Grail War could be said to be relatively safe, even if the 72 ancestors existed. Thinking about this, Wuming subconsciously walked to the food market that he used to frequent. A familiar voice came. Brother Amiya, come again next time. Thank you very much, Mr. Store Manager. Wuming looked at the source of the voice. As a frequent customer, Wuming naturally knew the store manager. And standing in front of the store manager was a red-haired young man. Shiro. Hearing someone call his name, Shiro Amiya turned his head and looked at Wuming. You are. Wuming smiled when he saw the face that was exactly the same as Wei Gong Shiro's but slightly immature face. On the streets of the residential area, Shiro Amiya and Wuming walked side by side. Mr. Wuming, do I know you? Even so, Shiro Amiya still took Wuming home. Wuming only said, it just so happens that I don't have a place to stay now. I'll stay at your place for a few nights. After all, Wuming knew Shiro Amiya very well. In the world of Meiyu, apart from his identity as a magician, Shiro Amiya was simply a good person. Therefore, Wuming believed that this world's Shiro Amiya's personality should be the same. This led to the scene just now. Shiro is really forgetful. We've met before, and you even affectionately called me Big Brother. Is that so? Then, Big Brother, yes, Shiro, what's the matter? Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming, who didn't let him speak at all. He wiped the non-existent sweat and felt a little powerless. I have a sister and 2 nannies at home. It may be a little inconvenient. I hope Big Brother doesn't mind. When he heard Shiro Amiya say that he had a sister, Wuming's eyes lit up. Then Wuming asked, what about your parents? Are they not at home? Shiro Amiya and Wuming turned the corner, then Shiro Amiya explained, they are often not at home because of work. They have been traveling abroad, so there is only me, my sister, and 2 aunts at home. I'm really looking forward to it. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming in confusion. Mr. Wuming, what are you looking forward to? In response, Wuming said with a nostalgic expression, because I also have a cute sister. Then Wuming said, also, I told you to call me Big Brother. Why are you calling me Mr. Wuming? Then he looked at Shiro Amiya with a penetrating gaze. Shiro Amiya quickly said, I know, Big Brother. The two chatted. After a few minutes of walking, Shiro Amiya stopped in front of a small house. Big Brother, this is my home, Shiro Amiya said. Looking at this ordinary 2-story house, Wuming thought in his heart. Sure enough, Shiro Amiya in this world lives an ordinary life. I just don't know if Shiro Amiya in this world's sister is Meiyu. Big Brother. Wuming came back to his senses and looked at Shiro Amiya. Sorry, I was thinking about something just now, Wuming said apologetically. It's okay, let's go in. Then, Wuming followed Shiro Amiya into the house. I'm back, Aunt Sela, Shiro Amiya shouted, and then began to change his shoes. Shiro-kun, are you back? A beautiful woman dressed in a housewife's outfit walked out. Short white hair, tied in a ponytail, placed in front of her chest, red pupils. Looking at the red pupils, Wuming thought of Sieg. According to Wuming's understanding, Sieg was made according to the androids of the House of Einstein Barons. It seems that this world is not so ordinary. Wuming thought. This is. Silas saw Wuming standing behind Shiro Amiya and asked in confusion. Nice to meet you, beautiful lady. I'm Shiro's brother when he was a child, Wuming said gracefully. Shiro, Kun's brother. How come I've never heard of this? Sela pointed her finger to her cheek, looking very puzzled. In short, my brother is going to stay in our house for a few days. Sorry to trouble you, Aunt Sela. Shiro Amiya quickly helped Wuming to smooth things over. Since Shiro has said so, well, I'll go and tidy up the room. After that, Sela walked into the room. It's really strange. Logically speaking, Aunt Sela shouldn't have agreed so easily. Wei Gongshi scratched his head and said with some doubt. Well, maybe I'm more polite. Wuming said with a smile. In fact, Wuming used magic similar to mental interference to slightly influence Sela and make her feel that this matter is normal. Shiro Amiya said. Brother. With a voice like an oriole, a young figure ran over from the living room. A child with red eyes, white skin, and long silver-white hair ran over. She was wearing a one-piece dress. Isn't that Mayu? Wuming saw the child and there was a slight disappointment in his eyes. Ilya, I'm back, Shiro Amiya said to Ilya. Well, welcome back, brother, Ilya said cutely. This big brother is. Ilya looked at Wuming and asked Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya told Ilya what Wuming said before. Ilya, who was still an elementary school student, didn't think too much about it. In addition, with Wuming's mental interference, Ilya didn't care. Hello, big brother. I'm Ilya von Einstein Baron. Sure enough, it's the House of Einstein Barons. Seeing Wuming not speak, Shiro Amiya thought that Wuming was wondering why his surname was not the same as Ilya's. Then, he explained, brother, because I was adopted by Ilya's parents, I followed Ilya's father's surname Amiya. Wuming smiled. There's no need to explain. I just thought of my sister. I haven't seen her for a while and miss her a little. Does big brother also have a sister? Ilya asked. Chapter 130. That's right. She is a child as cute as you. If you two meet, I believe you two will definitely become good friends. Wuming said to Ilya with a smile. Ilya blushed from Wuming's praise and didn't say anything else. Afterward, Sela tidied up a room. Mr. Wuming, do you need any daily necessities? It's not too late now and I'm going out. I can help you buy them. Sela said gently. Just call me Wuming. We are about the same age. You are Shiro's guardian and I am Shiro's elder brother. You and I can address each other as equals. I'll have to trouble you with the daily necessities, Miss Sela. Wuming said very gently. How can I do that? Then I'll accept. Wuming, you can also call me Sela. The conversation between Wuming and Sela surprised Shiro Amiya and Ilya. After all, they had just met for less than an hour and they were actually so familiar with each other. Sela went out and Shiro Amiya went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Wuming and Ilya went to the living room together. At this moment, Wuming discovered that a graceful woman was lying on the sofa in the living room. Her silver-white hair was lazily draped over her shoulders and her red pupils were bored to death watching TV. Her upper body was wearing a loose short-sleeved top that exposed her back and shoulders. Her voluptuous breasts were on the verge of popping out. Her lower body was only wearing a pair of denim shorts and her white thighs were exposed to the air. "Big sister Liz, a guest is here," Ilya reminded. After all, she also discovered that her big sister Liz's clothes were a bit revealing. Oh, it's Ilya. What's wrong?" Liz said without turning her head, not caring that her spring scenery was seen by Wuming. "It's Big Brother Shiro's big brother. He wants to stay at our house for a few days," Ilya hurriedly said. She turned to look at Wuming, her emotionless eyes revealing a trace of curiosity. "Shiro's big brother. Welcome, welcome." The rather cold voice didn't let Wuming know that it was welcoming him, but Wuming still smiled. "Nice to meet you, beautiful lady. Just call me Wuming." "Nice to meet you. My name is Lizelet." Lizelet turned her head back and continued watching the anime on the television. Alia's shoulders drooped helplessly as she cautiously said to Wuming, Big brother, don't mind her. That's just how Sister Lilith is." Facing Ilya's apologetic words, Wuming shook his head. "I don't mind. Rather, I should say that Miss Lizelet is very interesting." Is that so?" "Big brother, as long as you're satisfied," Ilya said helplessly. "Okay, Ilya, I'm going to see if I can help Shiro. You can go do your own thing. There's no need to accompany me," Wuming said. Big brother can cook too?" Ilya raised her small head and asked. "Of course. No matter what, I have a younger sister. How can I not practice my cooking skills?" Wuming said solemnly. Then, Wuming came to the kitchen. "Big brother, why are you here?" Shiro Amiya, who was wearing an apron, asked in surprise. "Of course, I'm here to cook tonight's dinner." Then, under Shiro Amiya's surprised gaze, Wuming and Shiro Amiya prepared dinner for today's House of Einstein Barons. When all the dishes were placed on the table, Ilya and Sella were stunned. Now, there were many exquisite dishes on the table. Just by looking at them and smelling them, the two of them had already fallen in love. Did Big Brother make all these?" Ilya asked with sparkling eyes. "Shiro and I made them together." Wuming smiled. Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed. After all, although Shiro Amiya also made some dishes, Wuming made most of them. In fact, no one would feel that there was anything wrong with taking away Shiro Amiya's dishes. After all, compared to Wuming's cooking, Shiro Amiya's cooking was still too tender. "I'm the person in charge of taking care of Ilya's meals and Mayo's meals for so long. If I can't make such dishes, then the name of the root dragon will cry." That was what Wuming thought. But Wuming often slacked off when he was in Great Britain. He was often not in charge of Artoria's meals and often left it to Guy or Bedivere. However, Artoria could easily tell that Wuming didn't make the dishes, which led to her scolding Wuming angrily. On the other hand, Merlin liked to watch from the side with a smile. During the 5 years that he lived with Mayu and Shiro, Wuming would also specially make her favorite omelette rice for Mayu. But later on, he would let Shiro Amiya cook for her. Although Mayu didn't want to scold Wuming like Artoria, her disappointed expression made Wuming feel guilty. As a result, the dishes that Wuming made in the past 5 years were comparable to the dishes that he made for himself since he was born. After everyone started eating, Ilya, Sella, and Shiro Amiya's eyes lit up. Even Lizette looked at Wuming strangely. "It's not bad, right?" Wuming asked with a smile. "It's delicious," Ilya yelled. Hey! Big brother, why don't you stay at our house for a long time?" Ilya looked forward to it. "No, Ilya. How can you be so rude? You have to be a lady." Sella was still immersed in the sea of delicious food. After hearing Ilya's unladylike words, she instantly returned to her senses and lectured Ilya. "Ah, I know, Mother Sela." Ilya looked at Sela with a headache. Shiro, Amiya and Lizette looked at this, mother and daughter, calmly as if it was a daily life in the house of Einstein barons. "By the way, Wuming, you're really Shiro's big brother. You're also very good at cooking," Sela said. "And Shiro, you too. You often cook by yourself and always compete with me for chores. I'm the nanny and guardian entrusted by Madam. How can you do this?" Hearing Sela start lecturing Shiro Amiya, Ilya secretly sighed in relief. Wuming looked at the warm scene of this family. Sela kept lecturing, Shiro Amiya listened awkwardly. Ilya was glad that she got rid of Sela's lecturing, and Lizette kept stuffing food into her mouth without saying a word. She ate happily. If only Mayu was here, just like that, dinner for the day in Einstein Barons ended in a happy atmosphere. At night, everyone fell asleep. Wuming stood alone on the roof and looked at the bright moonlight shining on the earth. Mayu. Chapter 131. It had been some time since Wuming stayed at Ilya's house. On a certain weekend morning, Wuming brought the last portion of breakfast to the table. "I'm going to eat," everyone said in unison, and then they began their journey of food. "By the way, I found a place to stay in Winterwood City. I might move out tomorrow," Wuming suddenly said. There was silence at the table. Sela was the first to speak. "I almost forgot. Wuming is clearly staying at our house. I completely treat Wuming as a member of our family." Shiro, Amiya and Lizette both looked at Wuming without saying anything. "Big brother, are you really leaving?" Ilya looked pitifully at Wuming. During the time he lived with Ilya and the others, Wuming had already conquered the 4 people of the House of Einstein Barons with his temperament, smile, personality, and other aspects. Especially Ilya. Because Wuming had a younger sister, Wuming was especially attractive to children, especially children of Ilya's age. He could win the hearts of children. To Ilya, Wuming is not only her older brother's big brother, but also her older brother. This person understands her thoughts, knows how to please her, is incomparably calm, treats everything with a sincere smile, cooks delicious food, and dotes on her even more than her adopted brother, Shiro Amiya. Ilya also forgot the fact that Wuming is only staying at their house. Wuming wanted to laugh at this matter that made everyone frown. "I'm just not staying at this house. I didn't say that I won't come back in the future." After Wuming said this, everyone realized that Wuming said that he had found a place to stay in Winterwood City and didn't say that he was leaving. When everyone heard that Wuming wasn't staying here, they ignored what Wuming had said. Seeing that everyone was obviously relieved, Wuming smiled and said, "I will come often, don't worry." "Hey big brother, can we go to your house and take a look?" Ilya asked. Sela also said, "Yes, Wuming, you don't know anyone in Winterwood City. Even if you move into a new house, no one will celebrate. We can help you tidy up the house and celebrate." Seeing Shiro, Amiya and Lizette nodding, Wuming looked at Sela and Ilya's expectant eyes and smiled. "All right then. Yeah. That's great." Ilya jumped up in excitement. "Ilya, be a lady, be a lady." "Ah yes, yes, I know, Mama Sela." Everyone was once again amused by this common scene. On the edge of Winterwood City, which was originally a wasteland, a huge Japanese-style mansion appeared here. Ilya, Sela, Lizette, and Shiro looked at this scene with a dumbfounded expression. So amazing, when did such a building appear on the edge of Winterwood City? This is too big," everyone exclaimed. To the stunned crowd, Wuming opened the door of the mansion and said, "So, are you still going to help me clean my room?" Sella heard Wuming's teasing tone and immediately said, "Of course, I'm the head maid of the House of Einstein Barons. Such a small house can't stump me." As he spoke, he strode in with large strides. "Mama Sela, don't tell me you really want to clean Big Brother's house," Ilya complained. With Aunt Sela's personality, she might really do that. Shiro Amiya wiped his cold sweat and smiled awkwardly. Lizette didn't say anything and walked in directly. Shiro Amiya and Ilya, who were worried about the two of them, also hurriedly walked in. Wuming wasn't in a hurry to go in. Wuming looked at this familiar house, and Wuming recalled the Amiya mansion in the other world. This Japanese-style mansion, which was somewhat similar to the Amiya mansion, was made by Wuming based on the Amiya mansion. Position creation. As a magician, he could create a terrain that was advantageous to him in a short time. As long as there were materials, he could even create a shrine that had been worshipped before. Wuming used his ability as a caste to build this mansion on the first night he stayed at Ilya's house. It was Wuming's magic workshop. Because he was afraid of trouble, Wuming had set up a spiritual interference-type enchantment to create the illusion that a house was being built here for the passers-by. After estimating that it was about time, Wuming removed the barrier. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, this was a mansion that had been built for a long time. This place was originally the address of the Amiya mansion in the other world. At this moment, Wuming continued to use this address. "If Mayu comes to this world, then I'll build a home for her," Wuming said. The two words Shuoyu were written on the door plate next to the mansion's entrance. Wuming had reported his name as Shuoyu Wuming. Although Ilya and the others felt that it was a little strange, they still accepted it. After all, following the surname Amiya was a little special. Then, Wuming walked into the Shuoyu mansion. In the courtyard, Ilya and the others were shocked. "As expected, Big Brother, you're very rich," Ilya suddenly asked. "It's okay, but money is just a number to me." This was what Wuming, who had saved some gold bars in the other world, said. Moreover, Wuming didn't spend any money on this mansion. It was a magic workshop that was completely created out of thin air. Wuming had already solved the problems of the house deed and land deed with magic. Of course, the money that should be spent was still spent. I really couldn't tell. Is Wuming-kun so rich? Then how did you end up staying at our house? Sella asked in confusion. Wuming smiled in response. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have known you. Well, that's true. Let's help Wuming-kun tidy up the house first. It must be very troublesome to tidy up such a big house. If we don't hurry, we won't be able to make it in time for dinner tonight, Sella said. Then, she began to tidy up the room with Ilya, Lizette, and Shiro Amiya. Wuming also helped from the side. In fact, Wuming brought the four to his house to test them. After all, whether it was Shiro Amiya or Ilya, the four of them all had excellent magic circuits. Now, it seemed that the four of them were really living as ordinary people. Soon, the five of them finished tidying up Wuming's mansion. Although the house is big, there is surprisingly nothing to tidy up, Shiro Amiya said. Well, after all, after this house was built, I only bought some furniture from the store. I don't have any luggage, so it looks like there are many rooms in the house, but in fact, there isn't much to tidy up, Wuming said. Then, let's go make dinner. Ilya raised her small hand and said excitedly. You want to eat Wuming's cooking, right? Lizette complained. Ilya, who was exposed, blushed. Everyone laughed. Chapter 132. In the Shoayu mansion, Wuming was the head chef, Shiro Amiya and Sella acted as assistants. A perfect and sumptuous meal appeared on the table. Ilya couldn't wait to pick up a piece of meat and then had a look of enjoyment on her face. Aha, Big Brother's cooking is as delicious as always. Wuming picked up vegetables and put them in Ilya's bowl. Then, he smiled and said, eat more if it's delicious. After all, you won't be able to eat my cooking every day in the future. After hearing Wuming's words, Ilya had a gloomy expression. Really, if only Big Brother was a member of our family. Shiro, Amiya and Sella also nodded. As if thinking of something, a sly glint flashed in her vermilion eyes. Then, she pretended to casually say, if only Wuming and Sella could get married. Ah! Sella was like a cat whose hair stood on end. You! What are you talking about, Lizette? How? How is it possible to get married? Looking at the blushing Sella, the corner of Lizette's mouth curved up slightly. But, Sella, aren't you already at the age of marriage? It just so happens that Shiro's big brother is about the same age as you. He's young, rich, gentle, and considerate. He can take care of the house and cook. His cooking is enough to support you. Don't miss this opportunity. After hearing Sella's words, Shiro, Amiya, and the blushing Ilya also reacted. Young, handsome, gentle, considerate, and elegant. He has such a big house and doesn't lack money. Most importantly, he can cook well, so Big Brother is this outstanding? So Big Brother is this outstanding? That was the thought of the two at this moment. Even Sella, who was blushing and stuttering, had a hesitant expression. She looked at Wuming with uncertain eyes. This made Wuming feel a little awkward. Wuming knew himself well. Although his current personality wasn't bad, it was still somewhat different from Wuming's original personality. After all, the current Hyunryong caster's body had such a gentle and considerate character. Even the skills had a bit of favorability bonus. Wuming's original calm, bold, and decisive personality as a problem child could no longer be seen. The point was that Wuming knew that she was joking. After spending so many days together, apart from Shiro, Amiya, whose personality hadn't changed much, Wuming understood Sella, Ilya, and Ligerite very well. She usually looked weak and listless, but in reality, she was very good at finding entertainment for herself. Take Sella for example. During the days that Wuming stayed at Ilya's house, he had seen Sella being teased by Lilith more than once. Therefore, Wuming coughed for the embarrassment caused by this little demon-like girl. Ahem, I will also go to your house on weekdays, please rest assured. Although he said that, he still finished the meal awkwardly. Before leaving, Wuming stood outside his house, and Ilya and the others stood in front of Wuming. Then, we will go first. Sella said. Although Sella still blushed when she looked at Wuming at the moment. Well, please be careful on the road, Shiro, as a man, you must protect others. Shiro, Amiya smiled and then said to Wuming, Winterwood City is usually very safe. In this regard, Wuming looked at Shiro, Amiya with a brother, I am very disappointed look. Shiro, Amiya smiled awkwardly. Big brother, you have to come often. Ilya looked at Wuming expectantly. Wuming squatted down, touched Ilya's head, and said, I will. Watching the four figures disappear into the distance, Wuming didn't prepare to return to the house until the four figures disappeared around the corner. At this moment, a magical fluctuation came. Wuming didn't stay idle these days. He went out in the name of work and set up some detection-type enchantments in Winterwood City, which were specially set up to detect magical fluctuations. Among the tactics that Wuming had set up, the only thing that could cause a fluctuation was a class card. Did it appear? Class cards. Wuming jumped onto the roof and went to the place where the class cards were. On the other half of the Winterwood Bridge, Wuming walked over. Wuming walked to a place and looked for the center of the mirror world. Is it here, Collis? Wuming stood on a flat ground and said to Collis. Yes, Master, you can now teleport to the mirror world through a special spell. the golden green dragon horn headdress appeared. Well, let's get started. Then, a special magic circle appeared under Wu Ming's feet. The magic array spun and changed continuously. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared, and silent wonder disappeared from where he stood. At this moment, Wu Ming had entered the mirror world. Almost after a few minutes, a spell reappeared in the same place. Wu Ming appeared in the same place with a light. There was no change, no embarrassment, but he was holding a card in his hand. The mysterious old man was wearing a hooded robe, with a white beard to his waist, holding a staff and a magic book. This was the same caster class card as Wu Ming. Wu Ming looked at the caster class card and said, "Sure enough, this is indeed the class card I encountered in another world." After Wu Ming entered the mirror world, he met a purple-haired woman wearing a magic robe and holding a magic wand. At a glance, Wu Ming could tell that the other party's uniform was the same as the heroic spirit state that Atlam had used that day. In order to find out the other party's real name, Wu Ming deliberately entangled with the other party for a while. Wu Ming was not afraid of the other party's trump card. Wu Ming had already taken out his mythical Yggdrasil. As the same level of existence as Gibalg, although Wu Ming's mythical Yggdrasil didn't have the effect of the heart attack, as an army-level noble phantasm, caster, who didn't even have a magic workshop, was nothing to be afraid of. Yes, after the appearance of the caster class card, Wu Ming came here for the first time. Caster in the mirror world didn't even have time to prepare a magic workshop. Wu Ming directly found him. After releasing a lot of kamikaze magic, Caster was forced by Wu Ming to take out his noble phantasm. After Wu Ming revealed his real name, Wu Ming easily defeated Caster. So that's how it is, no wonder you can use so many kamikaze magic. You deserve to be the legendary traitor Demetrius. Yes, the real name of Wu Ming's card was Demetrius, the one who was once feared and pitiful. Chapter 133. Demetrius, the traitor witch, existed in Greek mythology. The princess of Colchis, because of the curse of the goddess of beauty Aphrodite, fell in love with the leader of the hero ship Argo, Aeson's curse. In order to find the golden fleece, she betrayed her motherland, and killed her brother who came to find her, and cut him into 8 pieces. In the end, because of Aeson's betrayal, she killed Aeson's new love and her 2 biological sons. As the betrayal witch, Demetrius had her life's materialization noble artifact, Rule Breaker Talisman, Rule Breaker. The effect of the Rule Breaker rune was to return all magic spells that lasted for a certain period of time to their original state before the spell was cast. In short, it was to break all magic and return all magic to its original state. It was also because Wu Ming released a lot of magic that Demetrius took out Rule Breaker Talisman, which allowed Wu Ming to recognize the other party's real name. It's just that the appearance of the class card is a bit abnormal. That's right, Wu Ming had asked Bazette about the time when the 2 class cards would appear. The difference between the 2 was almost 2 months, but the time when Wu Ming appeared was a month. Now the time when the caster class card appeared was more than half a month. Wu Ming felt that the remaining 4 class cards were likely to appear together. Well, let's talk about it later. After that, Wu Ming directly opened the portal and walked in. The night continued quietly like this. The next day, Wu Ming got up early and began the meditation at the beginning of the day. Almost an hour later, Wu Ming's door was knocked. Wu Ming opened his eyes and projected the view in front of the door in front of him. "Ilya," Wu Ming said in confusion. Yes, it was Ilya standing in front of his door. Wu Ming got up and quickly walked to the door. After opening the door, Ilya said happily, "Big brother." "Ilya, are you the only one who came here?" Wu Ming looked at Ilya first, then looked around and found that there was no one else. "Well, I'm the only one here," Ilya replied. In this regard, Wu Ming frowned, and then said, "That won't do, Ilya, although my home is very close to yours, because my home is on the edge of Winterwood City, try not to come alone in the future. At least find someone to accompany you. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Ilya said with a blush. Well, Ilya, why are you free to come to me today? Wuming responded to Ilya and asked. Ilya was somewhat unhappy. She puffed up her cheeks and looked at Wuming somewhat angrily. Really, Big Brother said that he would take me to the amusement park at the end of this week. Big Brother wants to go back on his word. Only then did Wuming recall that he had indeed said this sentence. It was an afternoon almost a week ago. Wuming drank afternoon tea and leisurely watched TV. Ilya came back from school, looking a little listless. Wuming immediately saw that Ilya was in a bad mood. As a member of the family, Wuming asked, "What's wrong, Ilya?" Ilya said unhappily, "I fell asleep in class today and was lectured by the teacher." Wuming recalled that last night, he and Ilya were playing with the high-level jigsaw puzzle that he had just bought. There were a total of 20,000 jigsaw puzzles. With Wuming's wisdom and Ilya's hard work, the two finally finished the jigsaw puzzle around 12 o'clock. Because Wuming wanted to deliberately hide his inhuman characteristics, he did not put much effort into the jigsaw puzzle. These jigsaw puzzles were basically put together by Wuming, who kept reminding Ilya. This led to Ilya's lack of energy and also led to Ilya being reprimanded by the teacher, so when she returned home, she looked unhappy. Sorry, it's all my fault. How about this, I'll invite Ilya to play at the amusement park next weekend, how about it? Wuming quickly said with an apologetic smile. Really? Long live Big Brother. Ilya happily hugged Wuming and shouted. This loud voice attracted the attention of Sela, who had the goal of cultivating Ilya into a virtuous lady. Ilya! Don't be so loud at home, be a virtuous lady, understand? Sela ran out of the kitchen and began lecturing Ilya without changing her clothes. Although it was called lecturing, in fact, she was gently advising. This was different from Shiro Amiya. When dealing with Shiro Amiya, Sela was as strict as possible, making Shiro Amiya extremely embarrassed. After regaining his senses, Wuming said, "Sorry, Ilya, I forgot about it because of work." Really? How could you forget? I've been looking forward to going to the amusement park alone with Big Brother for a long time. Ilya's face was a little red as she spoke. How about this, Ilya, you sit in my house for a while, how about it? Okay. Ilya was obediently led by Wuming to the edge of the courtyard. Ilya sat on the edge, while Wuming went into the house to prepare. Soon, Wuming stood behind Ilya fully armed. Wuming said, "Let's go, Ilya." Ilya turned her head and nodded heavily, "Okay, let's hurry up," and set off. Soon, Wuming brought Ilya to Winterwood City's amusement park and found that it was not bad. After buying the tickets to the amusement park, Wuming held Ilya's little hand and walked into the amusement park. "What do you want to do first, Ilya?" Wuming asked Ilya. Ilya pointed at the merry-go-round not far away and said happily, "Let's play this first." Then, Ilya pulled Wuming's hand to the side of the merry-go-round and began a day of fun. Wuming and Ilya had played almost all the facilities in the amusement park. They had basically played pirate ships, haunted houses, bumper cars, merry-go-round, Ferris wheels, and so on. Ilya had lunch in the amusement park's restaurant and looked a little dissatisfied. As expected, after getting used to Big Brother's cooking, "I can't taste these dishes that were originally delicious," Ilya said as she ate. "These dishes are already very delicious. It's not bad to change the taste occasionally," Wuming said from the side. "That's right, Big Brother, tell me about your past." Ilya's little face revealed an expectant expression. Past. Let me think about it. Only then did Wuming recall that he could be said to have many adventures now. It was enough to publish a book. In the beginning, there was a young man called Wuming. Chapter 134. Wuming adapted what he had experienced and told Ilya the adventure story of an ordinary person. When he finished, it was almost evening. It's already so late. Let's go back, Ilya. Wuming patted Ilya's head. Okay. Ilya and Wuming held hands and walked out of the amusement park together. On the way, Ilya revealed a happy expression. Big brother, your experience is really good, amazing. Big brother, are you an adventurer? Ilya asked. Kind of. I like to travel around. In an instant, Ilya revealed an envious and yearning expression. That's great. Mama Sila doesn't let me do anything exciting. I really envy Big brother. After hearing Ilya's words, Wuming patted Ilya's head and smiled. This is because Sila has to think about your safety. Adventure is not a simple thing. It's full of danger everywhere. That's why I said that you should just be a good primary school student. Ilya, whose head was patted by Wuming, turned her little head unhappily. I know. Seeing Ilya like this, Wuming smiled. If there's a chance next time, I'll take you on an adventure, Ilya. Ilya's expression changed from depressed to expectant. Really? That's great. Ilya hugged Wuming happily. Then, while the two chatted, Wuming and Ilya arrived in front of the house of Einstein Barons. At the corner not far in front of the house, a tomboy was looking here. Bizet? Wuming narrowed his eyes. Originally, Wuming wanted to cook dinner at Ilya's house according to her wishes, but Bizet's arrival seemed to indicate that something had happened. Sorry, Ilya, I just remembered that I have something important to do. I can't go to your house. You can go back first. They had clearly arrived at Ilya's doorstep, but Wuming said that he had something to do. However, Ilya wasn't an unreasonable person. In her opinion, since Big Brother said that there was something, then there must be something. And, all right then. Goodbye, Big Brother. You must come again next time. After waving goodbye to Ilya, Wuming walked to Bizet's seat. Did something happen? Wuming asked. Bizet simply nodded and said, the card you gave me has been discovered. Wuming was stunned for a moment, then he said, it's Zelik, right? Bizet nodded again. Yes. Wuming shook his head in surprise. That old man is quite impressive. Just how many parallel worlds has he connected to? Wuming smiled and mumbled to himself. Bizet didn't say anything. First, it was because Bizet couldn't understand what Wuming said. Second, even if Bizet could understand, it had nothing to do with her. She was only here to pass on the message. That sir has asked you to go, Bizet said. Understood. I'll go now. After saying that, Wuming opened the teleportation gate and walked in under Bizet's shocked gaze. Suddenly, Wuming's head stretched out from the pitch-black and red teleportation gate. Do you want to come together? Bizet was silent, but he still looked at Wuming with a look of resistance. Wuming faintly smiled and grabbed Bizet. Wah! Bizet let out a panicked scream. Far away on the other side of the continent, in the upper floor of the clock tower in England. Outside Zelika's door, a pitch-black and red teleportation gate appeared. Wuming pulled Bizet's arm and walked out of the teleportation gate. You're really clumsy, Wuming commented. Bizet's face was a little red as he stared fiercely at Wuming. In response to Bizet's stare, Wuming shrugged and then walked into Zelika's room. Bang! Following the sound of the door closing, only Bizet was left in the hallway. After tidying up his clothes, Bizet left as well. In the room, Wuming walked to the sofa and sat down. Finally, He poured himself a cup of tea. You're really self-conscious, Hyunryong. The old man sitting on the chair in the dim room laughed. It's your face every time. Even if you don't find it annoying, I do. Wuming looked at Zelik with disdain. Ha ha ha, I was a popular man when I was young. Zelik laughed. Wuming understood the old man's character. He couldn't help it. He met him once in every world. He couldn't not understand him. You know what's going on with the class card, right? Zelik said. Well, after all, this is also something that I contributed to. Wuming took a sip of tea and said. Why, Jem Wuming wants to study it. Just in time, I have a caster class card here. Wuming said as he took out a card. Zelik smiled and said, I'm not interested in this, but some people in the clock tower are interested in the class card, so they sent Mark Remus to collect the class card. What do you mean? Wuming asked. I don't have anything that you want. How about this, I'll give you this, and you stop collecting the class card. Later, Zelik took out a suitcase, which seemed to contain very valuable items because the suitcase was surrounded by various charms. Zelik opened the suitcase and revealed the items inside. This is. Wuming was surprised. Inside the suitcase was a clay plate, and the clay plate was full of ancient aura. This is the clay plate excavated from the Two Rivers Basin. Not to mention that the clay plate has the quality of a holy relic, it also contains the magic of the gods. It is a rare original magic book. This made Wuming think carefully. You know, the original magic book is also a very powerful tool for Wuming, and it can also be used as a holy relic. Wuming speculated that if he summoned it with his own affinity, it must be the Hero King. Deal. After a while, Wuming left Zelika's office. Wuming returned to the Shuoyu house through the portal. Before that, Wuming wanted to give the caster class card to Zelik, but Zelik said, I'll leave it with you first. Since people have said so, Wuming will not be unreasonable. According to Zelik, in about a week, Zelik will send people from the clock tower to Winterwood City again. The world of the class cards mentioned by Zelik has been estimated, almost a week later, so the rest of the class cards will appear. Zelik asked Wuming to help the magician who was sent to recover the cards. First, Zelik didn't want the cards to fall into the hands of the clock tower's higher-ups who were not too good. Second, Zelik hoped to train the magician who was sent. Only the magician who came to support the recovery of the cards. Well, it has nothing to do with me anyway. Wuming threw the card casually, and the card fell into the golden ripples. Wuming turned and returned to the house. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.